Ball game over.
Now, here's John Dickinson.
Yeah, it's John Dickinson and it's Dan Devone here on Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game. 888-957-9570 as we are with you for the next 3 hours from 9 a.m. until noon. Devone, good to be with you. My favorite coconut, Dan Devone.
What's up, JD?
Joining me here on a Saturday again, and what a difference a week makes. I mean, wow. A week ago today, we're getting ready for the beginning of this 6-game homestand for the Warriors. They're sitting at 6-3, and you're thinking this is a real opportunity for Golden State to make some hay, getting off to such a great start on the road, and they've dropped all 4 games. Draymond Green's gotten himself suspended for the next 4, given the incident and following the incident against Minnesota. Steph Curry's hurt, although possible to return in the game tonight against OKC, and it looked like, all right, Warriors right there in the mix for the top 4 in the West, and now they're 6-7 and in 10th currently, although it's admittedly a little early to be looking at the standings. But, man, this thing flipped fast, and it feels like last year fast.
Well, speaking of last year, what a difference certainly a year makes when the Warriors could do nothing right on the road, and it was all about home cooking for this team, and you just flipped that script this year. Yet to win on this 6-game homestand, which was thought to be, after all the success on the road, home cooking. The Warriors are ready to get out and have something similar to 2 years ago when they got to that 18-2 start after 20 games into a season in which they eventually won the NBA championship. But, hey, 2 weeks ago, we were doing a show, and the team was 5-1, JD. They just came off a win over OKC with that game winner of Steph, and all of a sudden, they're sub-500. I'll start things with you, man. What the hell happened?
Yeah, it's a lot of different things. I mean, it really, I think, began with the continued struggles of Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
I think first and foremost, before we get into Steph Curry ultimately going down and then the Draymond Green suspension, because I think, those things happen first, right? The length and the athleticism of Cleveland and of Minnesota Saturday and Sunday really bothered the Warriors. We talked about the fact that those had the potential to be tough matchups for Golden State on this show last week. They proved to be. And then you get Curry falls going on a layup, bangs the knee. Fortunately for the Warriors, no structural damage or anything too severe, but it's one of those situations where Steph's going to at least miss a couple of games, might miss tonight. He is officially questionable for tonight, so he could return tonight. Things trending in the right direction. It sounds like if it's not tonight, good chance it could be Monday against the Rockets. And then I think what you saw was the frustration of the games last weekend, Saturday and Sunday, bleed over into the early part of the game against the Timberwolves on Tuesday, to where, to me, it really all started with Klay Thompson as far as the incident with Jaden McDaniels and those two getting tangled up. And I think Klay may be feeling a little bit of what was a couple of 5-16s. I mean, look at this homestand, and the Warriors are 0-4. And just for a second, Klay Thompson's homestand specifically, and I know I'm kind of jumping around all over the board, but we got a lot of time to sort it all out. 5-16, ejected in the first 2 minutes, 1 of 10 in 4 games for Klay Thompson. I mean, that, to me, it kind of has started with him. You've got Draymond coming to the aid of Klay Thompson, which on the surface I don't really have a problem with, but then you have the horrible optics, as Steve Kerr mentioned a couple of nights ago, of the freeze frame image of Draymond Green putting Rudy Gobert at a headlock, and obviously those two have history, and that even continued beyond the ejection. So now you have sort of the worst aspects of Draymond, where he's not around to help his team because of either an altercation with another player or an incident involving officials. And now you have Klay Thompson, who's still struggling, and you're down Steph Curry, which immediately tests the depth. We talked about, hey, the big unchecked box for this team is, what does it look like without Steph compared to what it would look like without Steph a year ago? And I'll put it just right off. I mean, they look like the kind of team that can't win a game against anybody without Steph Curry, which doesn't bode well for the Warriors if Steph's going to miss, over the course of a season. It sounds like he'll be back again tonight or Monday. But over the course of a season, if he's going to miss 20 to 25 games, which is about what he's been missing these last few years, then, are the Warriors going to go 5-15 in those? And if they do, in 20 games that Steph misses, how the hell are you going to make up for that and be anything more than, a low 40s to mid 40s type of win team at the very best? So a lot to chew on. I think it really started with Klay Thompson's struggles, which led last Saturday and Sunday, which led to the altercation, which led to Draymond, and then you got Steph Curry getting hurt on top of that. But a perfect storm, and now the Warriors it's an uphill climb again. I mean, they were so fortunate to be playing the season at least through the first 5, 6, 8 games from a position of advantage. Now they're not at a position of advantage. Now they're facing that. It feels to me, Dan, like we're already going to be having those conversations of, well, if they can just be the six, nobody's going to want to play them. Maybe they can get to a conference final. You see who you're playing. Like it just feels like it's already shifting toward that, and here we are not even a month into the season.
There are so many things to unpack since the last time we spoke. We can start with Klay, and just watching this over the week, they provided national fodder for everybody, all right? Not much is happening in the NBA when you're just getting your toes wet into a new season. But I mean from ESPN, from TNT to anybody that has an opportunity with a makeup and a live mic, they were breaking down either Draymond, which dominated sports talk radio and the networks at the beginning of the week, or they go into Klay Thompson, the absence of Steph Curry and how much he means to this team, and then Andrew Wiggins. The Golden State Warriors essentially were the rundown, not only for us here locally, but throughout the entire country. Let's start with Klay, because I get it. We all like to overreact, and he has not been good this year. In fact, that 1 for 10, I don't know if he ever's gone one. Forget about an NBA game. I don't know if he ever's gone 1 for 10 in a YMCA pickup game. 1 for 10, and it was a brutal. That's about as ugly as it gets. In fact, I think that was his worst offensive output, I want to say, in his NBA career. But before we're ready to trade him, before we're ready to sit him down, and all the scenarios that have been bannered about over the last couple of days, I think that all of us just need to let this breathe a little bit. And I think we need to remind ourselves, as it relates to Klay Thompson, just to go back a short year ago, that this team got off to the 3-7 start. And yes, Klay Thompson was putrid. That's when he was hunting shots. He was in no flow. Remember, it got to a point where the tipping point was that game against Phoenix, where he was just jacking up shots. And Draymond Green, I'll never forget the image, had his hands in his head going, dude, what are you doing? It led to a players-only meeting.
It was a year ago yesterday.
Was it?
It was the players-only meeting. It was November 17th of last year. The game was on the 16th in Phoenix, I believe. And, yeah, it was basically a year ago today was the Knicks game where Klay Thompson started to snap out of it because of the players-only meeting that happened the day before. But continue.
Well, I guess my point being, just to wrap it up, is that he got off to the bad start. The Warriors never have players-only meeting. What, are you kidding me? But that December and January were the most productive that Klay has ever been offensively. And I'm talking about not over the last 5 years, going back to his 20s, back to the heyday. So there was another shoe that dropped clearly for Klay Thompson. So all I'm saying is, before we pass any judgment on Klay Thompson, let's just remember, first of all, the injuries that he's still, if you want to buy into that, it's been a while, coming back from the two horrific, the ACL and the Achilles tear. But last year in December and in January, the guy erupted. I still think that proverbial powder keg is right around the corner. And I might be one of the few, are holding out that I think Andrew Wiggins cannot lose what it is that he did not only a year ago, but certainly 2 years ago that quickly for a guy who's still 28, 29 years of age.
Well, here's the thing for me, and I tend to agree with you on Klay Thompson and the fact that at some point he will snap out of it and he will get red hot and will be, have that stretch similar to the one that he had last year. I don't disagree with any of that, but the point remains the same and the fact remains the same. When Klay Thompson's bad, the Warriors almost can't win. And so if he's going to be, again, it's not a matter of what the overall numbers look like at the end of the year. I've been crushed for this by a lot of Warrior fans. It's I don't care that he makes 300 and shoots 41%. If half the games are spectacular and half the games are like the game the other night or like the games on this homestand, then you're going to lose the half that are like the game the other night and like the games on the homestand. There's no it's got to be more steady. And look, to be honest, I really think Klay Thompson was playing at a level that was acceptable up until this homestand. And I feel like it flipped fast, right? All right, he had a 5-16 against the Cavs, and he comes out, he says, I'm going to be better. I thought that was one of the worst games I've played. A week ago tonight, he says that. All right, comes out, doesn't shoot it well against Minnesota. Minnesota's a top-flight defensive team in the NBA. You know what? It happens. Guys are going to have a couple of games in a row where they don't play well, or 3-4 games in a row where they don't play well. But the frustration bled over, and Jaden McDaniels is a clutcher and a grabber and somebody that wants to be extremely physical. He's got a little bit of the Draymond, the little Draymond in him, where he wants to mix it up with guys and toe that line as far as maybe an altercation is going to ensue. And I feel like Klay Thompson, he got frustrated, and in his mind, the struggles from the first two games with, oh man, I got this Jaden McDaniels guy all over me again. Who was all over Steph the night before, and this guy is just terrific defender, and he's like, you're not going to be you're not going to be grabbing me. You grab me, I'm going to grab you. And Jaden McDaniels is like, all right, well, if you're going to grab me, then we're going to go. And so it turns into that very quickly, and then everything that ensues off of it. What I'm getting at though is I feel like Klay was within that range of. He was having some okay games. He wasn't scoring, obviously, 20 or anything like that, but his games weren't killing him. They were good enough for the team to win up until last week. And the first couple of games they didn't win when he shot poorly, I feel like it turned into he starts thinking about it. Everything goes completely awry. I mean, when do you see Klay Thompson get into an altercation like that with another player to get himself ejected from the game? So I feel like there's just a frustration beneath the surface. I don't know whether it's the contract. I don't know whether it's probably just losing because he's so competitive and he's not used to having the struggles that he's had to this point, as consistently. So I think there's some of that, and it all mounts. But the bottom line is Klay's got to be more steady, and steady Klay is good enough if this team has the rest of their players, even if they're not scoring at an extremely high level besides Steph Curry, to win. And we saw that with the 6-2, 6-3 start to the season. So, the other part of it is there's no trade to be made. So I'm with you. I think Klay's going to snap out of it, but it's also going to continue to be up and down, and he's got to limit the downs. There's no trade to be made as far as major moves right now. This is the team for the Warriors. This is the team that they wanted to ride with from the moment they were eliminated 6 months ago in L.A. It was going to be Steph and Klay and Draymond. They all went in on each other. Steve Kerr was part of that. They were going to bring back Andrew Wiggins, and they were going to go get Chris Paul, basically say Jordan Poole was the big reason why that things didn't work out, and that they wanted to have a fresh chemistry for this year. The young players are going to be more productive. They go and sign Saric. Gary Payton II's back after the Wiseman trade. This is the team. And so at this point, we can quibble about whether Klay's not holding up his end or Wiggins has got to do this, and how do you mix in the young players more. We're going to do all that between now and noon here on 95.7 The Game. But the reality is there is no major move right now that the Warriors can, or even I would imagine want to make. It's the guys on this roster that the organization and the players themselves have bought into collectively that are going to have to be better. And unfortunately, it looks like this is a team where Steph Curry's going to have to be available. And if Steph Curry's not available, they immediately go into the pile of probably one of a bottom 5, bottom 8 team in the NBA.
And I think a lot of people could foresee this. What it is that you're talking about at the end of last year, and I've touched on this, doing shows during the offseason, that bad taste in everybody's mouth after they exited in the second round in the Game 6 against the Los Angeles Lakers. I think it was clear to everybody, sort of the collective thought was they need more. more in terms of offensive output. It was Steph and everybody else. They would go as far as Steph. Now, typically when they won or made any sort of deep runs into the playoffs and won championships, Steph obviously had Kevin Durant or a younger Klay Thompson to offset things. And, of course, we know what Andrew Wiggins did as being his number 2 years ago when they won the series against the Boston Celtics. So you would think over the offseason, to your point, that this is their team and this is who they consciously put together. You would think they would address that. How? I don't know. That's beyond my bandwidth. But what they did is they got you Chris Paul. Now, Chris Paul is not going to be that guy, a number 2 to offset the scoring from Steph Curry. And Dario Saric he's been a good piece, but he's clearly a peripheral piece as far as being a number 2. He's a good backup to Looney, maybe, can start at times. But that was clearly a void going into the season that I don't think that they ever really addressed, that this is still a team that will go as far as Steph will shoot you. He'll shoot you into games, and should Steph be out with an injury, well, you're rolling the risk of an inconsistent Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, who disappeared last year, and relying on him is a scary proposition as well. Just to get back to Klay Thompson for a moment, that I agree with you. He is right now at best, I think, a number 3 on a good team. He's your number 3 guy. And what happened to Klay, and we were singing his praises, JD. We were talking about he looks as though this year there was more of a buy-in. He wasn't hunting shots. Now, his shot volume was considerably down this year, but he looked as though he's playing more within the flow of the game. He was taking what it is that the offense was providing. But I think with the absence clearly in that last game, where Steph was out, obviously Draymond's out, and then, GPT2 goes out with the injury. I don't know whether somebody spoke to him. I don't think they needed to. I think he took it upon himself that I got to score. I got to score the basketball. And he went
Well, yeah, because the whole chatter was who's the second guy going to be, and Wiggins and Klay were taking the brunt of that, because as much as you're right, Klay hadn't been killing him. I think Klay looked around and said, well, I'm the number 2 on this team, and I need to perform like the number 2 on this team. And whether it's added pressure he puts on himself, or he's going to take more shots, or maybe he's not going to take as many good shots, I think that leads to what we saw last Saturday and Sunday.
He was hunting shots again. He was trying to be that guy, and he lost that complete sort of space that he was in, where he was deferring to Steph. And if he's going to be a valuable commodity to the Golden State Warriors, and the consistency is really the operative word here, is that he has got to relegate himself to the guy that if I'm open, I'll take it. If I've got that mid-range, which I love, I'll take it. If I see a lane and an avenue, I'll take it. But I am not the guy who can shake guys or heat check or try and erupt for more than 30 points in a quarter. Those things are clearly in the rearview mirror. They are not for Steph Curry, all right? But I think when you think about that foundation, that being the Hall of Famers, Dre, Klay, and Steph is Steph, right? He's having another MVP-type season. He's turning back the clock. He looks as though he's back into his mid-20s. Say what you will about Draymond, and I know there's a lot of wear and tear on Draymond, but it's not as evident to me that when you compare him to Klay, Klay clearly of the 3 has lost that step and a half. And I think you can see it in his game, and he has to have that come-to-Jesus moment that this is now my role if I'm going to be a consistent contributor to this team, and that role being what it is that he was doing the first 2 weeks of the season.
And I think he's had that thought, but it's like you said, I think he made the adjustment. I think he thought, hey, and it was all good as long as the Warriors were winning. But the moment they weren't winning, it was, I got to do more. And again, I do think he heard the chatter about the fact that, hey, it's Steph and nobody's helping him. And yeah, this team's winning, but it's Steph and it's the bench. And where's Wiggins and where's Klay Thompson? Does this team have a number 2? And look, rightfully so, given the career that Klay Thompson has had and the player that he's been. He's like, damn it, probably. Don't know for sure, but I would imagine he's thinking to himself, damn it, I'm the number 2. I'm the number 2. I've always been the number 2 for the Golden State Warriors, and or at least a 3 when Kevin Durant was here that performed like a 2, or it sometimes even performed like a 1 pre-injury. So, the reasons why I think are a little bit less relevant, and I do want to give Klay Thompson credit for what I feel like is making the adjustment through these first 9 games of the season. Like, I really didn't have anything. Yeah, he didn't have a spectacular game up until last Saturday, but he really wasn't killing him. He was, to quote our guy Matt Steinmetz, playing within himself, trying to really play within himself in the context of what the Warriors had going on. But immediately once they started losing, I think something changed. And look, it could just be a couple of defense, really good defensive teams that he's played. But Oklahoma City's not a great defensive team. Minnesota and Cleveland are. Oklahoma City's not. And, they do have some length. And Lou Dort's a good defensive player. I mean, they're a good young team. But I just feel like these games are snowballing on each other in a bad way off of, all right, 5-16, 5-16. Clearly you're getting ejected because of the frustration from a couple of 5-16s and 3 straight losses at that point, and the offense starting to go in a bad way. And then you come back off of that and you have the worst game of them all against Oklahoma City, 1 of 10 on Thursday. And now it's a full-blown thing. And it just, he's going to have to snap out of it, which I'm with you. I think he will. I think he will have great games ahead of him, and maybe tonight is one of those games. I still think he's capable of going for 30 or 40 on any given night. It's just going to be fewer and farther between, and it's what do the bad games look like? And the problem, again, is the bad games are really bad, and the bad games almost completely prevent the Warriors from winning. And that, when you add it up in the context of an 82-game season, that's why a team winds up being a 45-win team as opposed to a 50 or 52-win team.
This team, when Steph is off the floor and with Draymond gone, and I never thought I'd say this about the Warriors, because even when those guys are out, there's an identity. There's no identity with this team that I saw the other night.
And why would there be?
Well, yeah.
I mean, what would it even be? Like,
well, I think, wouldn't you? I mean, you could argue that the ball movement, the ball popping, regardless of who's on the floor, we still have sort of a structure in place, is sort of, our go-to. But they don't have, there is no identity with this team right now until Steph comes back, until Dre comes back. I don't know what it is that they're trying to do offensively. And as it relates to Klay Thompson, he is clearly not that guy, getting back to somebody that has physically lost that step and a half, if you want to be brutally honest about this, because he's got to shake guys. And you're talking about some of the best defenders, whether it's Lou Dort or Jalen Daniels or anybody that's extended out on him. They're long and they're disruptive. And so he's trying to do it on his own. He's trying to cross over and get free. My point being is that when you look at OKC, and OKC is essentially a creation, a product of what the Warriors created, right? The Warriors started all of this years ago, and OKC is exactly just, thank you very much, Steve Kerr, because they're just a small team. And watching that game, all they did was like draw and kick, right? They would kick the guys who were standing all alone out on the wing. Klay Thompson he's not the benefactor of just sitting out on the wing occasionally, or just being open for a 3 because somebody drew a crowd and they can kick it to me. Not only is he struggling, but within the confines of this offense, which has no identity, he's trying to, again, hunt those 3s and do it on his own. Does that make any sense? Like, it's compounding things right now, the way he's trying to score, because he has no assistance, because right now the team lacks any sort of purpose or identity on the offensive end.
Yeah, he's trying to do it because they don't have Steph, and to a lesser extent, they don't have Draymond, who's a big part of the ball movement and everything that the Warriors do. And so he's like, I'm the best player now, and so I'm going to try to perform like the best player and carry this team. And look, to his credit, he did do that along with Jordan Poole in February and March, when Steph Curry had to miss some time going back to last season, and the Warriors were able to win a lot of home games without Steph that eventually proved to be the reason why they were the 6th seed. So, it's not like Klay hasn't been able to do it, but I think it's getting caught in a perfect storm of where this team is at right now with, collectively, it's just a different team. Like, this is the kind of team, and maybe I get proven wrong, but this is the kind of team that needs everybody in place to be able to win. And even when they have everybody in place, you're still going to take some L's, and there's still going to be some nights where if the bench doesn't dominate, And if Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins are just ordinary, you're probably going to lose, even if Steph Curry's going for 35 or 40 points in a game and doing it at the level that he's done it to this point. But if you start taking pieces away, to me, that was the big concern all offseason long. And I'm not sure what the Warriors could have done other than break up the big three or look to trade Jonathan Kaminga for another, veteran type player that could come in and help fill the void a little bit. I mean, that was one option afforded to them in addition to using Jordan Poole as a chip as they did for Chris Paul. They made the determination to not do that. Maybe that's something, because I know everybody this week wants to make a trade, and you're hearing about Levine and you're hearing about DeMar DeRozan and what could the Warriors do. They need an infusion of something. Wiggins and Klay Thompson aren't it, at least not consistently. But, as far as the option of the way this team was built in the offseason, they were going to be at their most vulnerable without Steph. And that what is going to be, even if Wiggins and Klay Thompson were playing at a higher level than they're playing to this point in the season. All right, 888-957-9570. Hold that thought, Dan. We'll come back, get our first break in. We'll get to the phones. Again, if you want to join the conversation, 888-957-9570. Comcast Business text line is open as well. And we're going to hear also from Steve Kerr as he joined Willard and Dibbs last night for his weekly chat. It was a terrific chat. We'll get that run for you probably at 11 o'clock. We'll run that back and then react to it in the final hour of the program. Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight. Steph Curry questionable. We'll keep you updated throughout the morning and on into the afternoon as far as his status goes for tonight on the injury report, as it is Game 5 of the 6-game homestand. Warriors and Thunder tonight, but Warriors this week for the next 2.5 hours right here at 95.7 The Game.
At Lawton Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation Center, we know how hard it is to care for loved ones. Come and check out the 5-star facility named one of the top skilled nursing facilities by U.S. News and World Report. Visit us at lifegen.net or call Dan Daly at 415-566-1200.
Bank of America is the... Currys.com/kickoff.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
All right, rolling along. It's John Dickinson and Dan Devone. 888-957-9570. 888-957-9570. Warriors are 6-7. They've dropped 5 in a row after the 6-2 start. They are 0-4 on this 6-game homestand and 1-5 overall on the home floor to begin this season. And it's amazing, Dan. The one win was the Klay Thompson hits the jumper against Sacramento with 0.2 of a second to go. I mean, this team is literally one shot away from being 0-6 on the home floor after winning 33 out of 41 home games a year ago. It has completely flipped for this team so far. They made the point that they needed to be better on the road. They have been 5-2, but they have wasted the 5-2 start away from Chase Center, and they have found themselves really, I feel like, back in a very similar position with a similar feel as the early going of last year. I know that the players are different, the circumstances are different. The Warriors will even tell you that the vibes are still much better than they were a year ago at this point in time, and that's all fair. But at the same time, you're 6-7, and there's an uphill climb now. I mean, you're in that glut of the Western Conference where you're going to be fighting and are going to need to get hot at some point again and healthy to be able to make a run and consider yourself a top 4 team in the West.
I just want to touch on something we were talking about going into the break, and that is I heard a lot of trade talk, and I'm with you. Nobody's going anywhere, all right? That's just not happening. And whether it was Zach LaVine, I think Kendrick Perkins on ESPN mentioned this, and he said it's time to trade Klay Thompson. It's time. Like he wanted a solo shot and this big take of his. And so somebody pushed him and said, well, who are you going to trade him for? He said, there's a lot of teams. Philadelphia, Tobias Harris. I like, Kendrick, are you out of your mind? Do you not think Philadelphia, if you can see, and you don't live in the Bay Area, what it is that Klay Thompson is doing, do you not think Philadelphia has any idea what the hell's going on with Klay Thompson of the Golden State Warriors? Why in the world would they trade at Tobias Harris? Or why would anybody at this point trade for Klay Thompson, especially if you're talking about a frontline player? And by the way, I don't know if your fans out there watch Philadelphia or Tobias Harris. He's having a huge monster season for one of the surprise teams in the NBA. If you're going to trade anybody, he's going to be attached to a Jonathan Kaminga and or draft picks. Then there might be a level of interest. But just getting back to your point, people know and can see what it is that Andrew Wiggins is doing. You're not hiding him, right? You're not just saying, oh, hey, you can have Andrew Wiggins. Oh, we see what's going on. You're not selling us a bill of goods. If you want to attach him to something, maybe we can talk. So I'm with you. This is the team. And JD, I think the big concern going forward is just identifying the number 2. And nobody has stepped to the forefront and said, I got that role. And I don't know of anybody in the modern era that's relevant or significant when you're talking about playoffs and being a team, forget about winning a championship, just being a team that's over 500 that has just one star.
They have to get Steph Curry back first and foremost, and they have to keep him healthy.
Well, then you have no stars, yeah.
That would be my number one thing because, and look, this was the biggest concern, and it was an obvious one for all the chatter about Jordan Poole, and he had to go, and he did. He did have to go. Like, I'm not saying, I mean, among the crazy things you hear is, well, should the Warriors have kept Jordan Poole? No, the answer is no. They needed to move on from Jordan Poole to have any chance this year and to also have some flexibility financially moving forward to be able to do some other things in the coming years to get this thing on track and keep it on track. So Jordan Poole had to go, and the Warriors made that move. But the biggest risk in trading Jordan Poole was, how do you function when you don't have Steph Curry? And I think when you look up and down this roster to this point in the season, that was going to be a big problem, even if Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins were playing at a normal level. That was going to be a problem, even if the bench had been as good and dominant as it had been up until the last week. Really, that's been the other thing that's flipped over the last week. It's the fact that, hey, you take Steph Curry away for a couple of games, and now all of a sudden, yeah, the bench is still winning their matchup for the most part against opponents, but they're not dominating. And when the Warriors were winning those games at the beginning of the year, it was Steph Curry was going off. Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, for as poorly as they were playing, really in Wiggins' case more than Klay at that point, they weren't killing the Warriors, and the reason the Warriors were able to win was because their bench was outscoring opponents' benches by an average of 15 a game, but really in a couple of those games it was 30, 40 points in games. And so, it was the combination of Chris Paul and Saric and Kaminga and GP2 able to do some big-time things. All of that being said, the biggest risk in trading Jordan Poole is what do you look like without Steph? And I think, look, the Warriors lost a couple of games without, lost to Minnesota without him. They lose to Oklahoma City without him. We'll see if he comes back tonight or Monday or whenever. It's going to be pretty quickly here. But the reality is this team to me, and my biggest concern right now is not even Draymond or Klay or Wiggins, to be perfectly honest. My biggest concern is this team looks like a team that's going to win 2 games out of 20 if Steph Curry has to miss 20 over the course of an 82-game season. And if they do that, it's almost not going to matter what they do in any of these other games. Are they going to be, if Steph Curry misses 20 games, Dan, I'm going to do the math for you here real quick. If Steph Curry misses 20 games and the Warriors are anywhere between, let's say, a 3 and a 5-win team in those 20 games, then that basically means that they're going to have to go 40-20 in the other 60 games just to be a 46-ish win team, just to be a 10, from 10 under, let's say, to 10 over. That means you'd have to go 40-20 in the games where you have everybody. And I just don't know that this team's going to be that level through those other 60 games.
No, they're not. And I think that it's not only when Steph is out with an injury and not playing, but even I think when he's in a game, I still think somebody has got to balance the scoring. Now, I like when they were doing well and you were getting collective contributions, that's good, but at some point, somebody has just got to come center stage and saying, okay, I'm going to give 20 to 25 a night, as Andrew Wiggins has done predominantly throughout his career with the Golden State Warriors. But this can't continue. Even when Steph comes back, you cannot rely on Steph to give you 35, 40 a night and to be in the MVP conversation. I mean, if he has an off shooting night, or even if he's shooting well and you get into a shootout, somebody else has got to be able to score the basketball and score it consistently. Now, we haven't got into Andrew Wiggins, and maybe we can do that now, but I think Andrew Wiggins was supposed to be that number 2. I think that everybody, and even Steve Kerr, if he was being honest, that Klay Thompson, as we've discussed, is still a commodity, but he's, I think, in a perfect scenario on a good team, he's a number 3 option. So then who is it that offsets or can at least give you a consistent 18 to 20, 25 maybe on a good night? Who is that guy? And so with Andrew Wiggins, and the funk continues with this guy, but this is a recipe to lose. Because it's the same team of a year ago that, to me, I use that phrase, one-dimensional. But now it's without anything else as far as somebody. At least Klay would give you some games and Andrew Wiggins would be good. Now those two have disappeared. There's no formula to win right now. There's no recipe when Steph is off the floor. You cannot win that game because there is nobody scoring the basketball. And this gets back to Andrew Wiggins has got to be that guy. And also, I think the X factor in all of this at times is Jonathan Kaminga. And I think one of the reasons that maybe they held out and not making that trade or dealing him is that could this be the year that we have somebody in-house that can be that guy? Can he break out in year 3 and be the guy that consistently is going to give me the sort of points that I'm looking for? Somebody to be alongside Steph that defenses and teams have to be aware of. And I'm not there yet. with Jonathan Kaminga, and I think he's got a long, long way to go. And I know he was good as a starter the other night, but I still think that he's on a short leash. And I still think that there's a lack of confidence with Steve Kerr. So it brings us right back to this is a team void of any scoring power once Steph Curry's off the floor.
Well, again, they have been able to cobble it together, and I think it's two different things for me. They have been able to cobble it together and have a productive bench when they've had Steph Curry, available, not in the lineup. Obviously, he takes it. Like, they were winning the non-Curry minutes, which is something they had never been able to do. Really, going back since the early part of the Kevin Durant days, and even before that, when they had Iguodala playing at a high level, and Livingston and all of those players coming off the bench. So I think it is twofold. It's if Curry's not playing, you don't have nearly enough. If Curry is playing, I do think you have enough when your bench is whole, and it's Chris Paul, and it's Peyton, and it's Kaminga, and it's Saric, and it's that whole group kind of playing together. Moody is a part of that. Maybe Klay Thompson shifts into playing some minutes with that group as Steve Kerr's done, or Wiggins occasionally will shift up and play some minutes with that group as well. So I think to this point, the bench has proven that it can be pretty good when they have all the starters in their appropriate places. The problem is, and it's an obvious one. I mean, Steph Curry is one of the greatest players ever, and he still is playing at that level this season. It's you take Steph away, and one, you don't have your superstar, but now Chris Paul's starting, and that means that your bench isn't going to be nearly as good. I'm with you on, I thought Kaminga had a pretty good game the other night, and you could even make the case, all right, he was the Warriors' best offensive player the other night. I think he was. I think he led him in scoring. But, okay, well, Jonathan Kaminga, I mean, we're also seeing if Jonathan Kaminga is your best player, what kind of team you are, right? You're getting run out by Oklahoma City, basically, in a game that's not close, aside from one little run in the third quarter for the whole night. And so, at home. So it's, he got his numbers, and I think Steve Kerr is, in the Oklahoma City matchup, it made sense to start Kaminga and start Kaminga with Saric, knowing that Chris Paul was going to be the starting point guard. Like, I think that starting lineup made perfect sense. I think it fits with Klay and with Wiggins out there as well. But, Kaminga, the key is, can Kaminga do it and do it efficiently? And this has always been the key with him when it's a lesser role, when it's not. Because let's be honest, and again, I'm not coming after Kaminga here, but Kaminga on Thursday night, when he has the game that he had, like, he was basically playing for Orlando or Houston last year. Like he's playing for one of the worst 5 teams in the NBA, and he can go cook, and nobody cares if they win. And so playing on the Warriors Thursday is akin to playing on a young developing team, kind of where he can just go cook and nobody cares. So that the question on Kaminga is, how can he do it when it impacts winning at when everybody else is in place? Because I still don't think we're seeing that jump from him to where all of a sudden he's going to be so good that he's almost helping you win some of these games without Steph Curry single-handedly. I don't think that's coming. I think Thursday's an example of that, even though he played well and scored 21 points.
I think if you just look at the stat line and look at the homestand in the last 2 games, it pretty much tells you all you need to know in terms of the confidence that Steve Kerr has in him. The night that Draymond Green gets ejected and that Klay Thompson is out, he played 16 minutes. 16 minutes. And Pajmski the rookie gets 39 minutes to run. Now, granted, that was, a lot of people feel as though a star was born. We can get more into Pajmski. He had the big night. But 16 minutes. And that should tell you something. Then he starts in the next game. And he plays well, but there is not a consistent level of play from Jonathan Kaminga, and certainly not to the point where Steve Kerr feels comfortable giving him, hey, here's your 25 set minutes a night. Even though he played well the other night, 4 turnovers. And I still see there's moments where he's going 150 miles an hour.
But he's a high-volume guy at that point. If he's one of your best players, Steph and Draymond turn it over. If Kaminga's going to be a primary, let's say, ball handler because they need the ball in his hands to score, he's going to be a turnover. Like a lot, that's just, to me, that's. And I apologize for cutting you off, but I feel like that's the norm. Like he's going to be a high turnover. Like if he turns into a 1 or a 2 option at this point in his career, which is what he was the other night, then he's going to turn it over a ton. That's just price of admission, I feel like, for him right now.
It is. And maybe his are a little bit more egregious because I still feel as though he's going 120 miles an hour in a 15-mile-an-hour school zone. He's trying to make something that just simply isn't there. And I will give him credit that he's developed this mid-range. I cannot – you know what? Just to go on a tangent and digress for a second, I get it. Everybody has to address the 3-ball. Like it's a prerequisite for centers, for crying out loud. If you're 7 feet coming out of the college game into the NBA, when I was growing up, it's like stick your ass down on the dots and post up and don't ever leave. Get a jump hook, a turnaround jumper, and that's where you're going to live for the next 10 years. Now you've got to have a 3-pointer in your bag for NBA teams to take you seriously. And so everybody has got to shoot the 3. I get it. The game has changed due in large part to that of the Golden State Warriors. But Jonathan Kaminga shouldn't be shooting threes. And I say that because he's so good, I think, at developing this mid-range. And to his credit, he's going to the free throw line a lot. And what does that mean? That means that defenses are out of position. That's to his credit, that teams are having to reach because he's beating people, to the rim. He has a step on people. He's putting defenses in awkward positions. That's why you see him at the free throw line. But there are still so many holes in his game, including his handle. I don't want to sound like I'm an assistant coach because that's well beyond, my grasp, my bandwidth. But I can see him, I don't have any confidence when he's putting it on the deck and he's 30 feet from the hoop. There are still so many warts on this guy's game. And he could be a good player maybe in 5 or 6 years, but he's not ready to take over that mantle of offsetting the scoring. I think he's number 3 on the team in scoring right now, with Steph being 1, and I think Klay is at number 2, and then it's Jonathan Kaminga. But I don't have a lot of confidence of him being that guy, even though it's early on in the season.
Well, and I'm not coming down your road, but why would you? I'm not, I can't, it's hard for me to be critical of Kaminga because, and I've said this, I don't mean to be redundant, but it's like I wasn't putting Kaminga on this pedestal like he was going to be some superstar this year or break out, oh my God, he's going to be an all-star next year, kind of a player. And so like to me, and I also will say this, like he can shoot the 3, but it needs to be the wide open corner 3. Like it needs to be, and I think the Warriors have given Kaminga a lot more rope in his game this year. I mean, I've said this too. It feels like they've said, hey, Jonathan, if you hustle and you rebound and you run the floor and you do those things, we're going to put you in positions offensively where you're going to get the ball and you can put it on the deck and drive, and you can, you love that pull-up jumper from the mid-range. You're going to get fouled, which he's done a terrific job of getting fouled. I mean, that is, I think the best thing Kaminga's done this year is get to the free throw line. Yeah. Now, he's got to make them when he gets there, but he's getting to the free throw line a lot, and teams really have a difficult time stopping him without fouling him when he gets a little bit of a head of steam. But I go back to last year, and again, I think the Warriors are also saying, Dan, that they need more out of him than the basic, because last year, you know what it really was? It was run the floor, it was dunker spot, it was you're only going to shoot it if the play is made for you by the rest of the team, and it ends up being a lob or a dunk or a corner 3. Hey, you get a corner 3 kicked out to you that's wide open, you must take that shot. It's a great shot created. Any other shot, keep it moving. And this year I do think it's different. I think they have empowered Kaminga to be able to try and cook a little more, because I think they know that that's something that he wants to do. It's, again, nobody's told me this, but my view is it's almost as if they made a little pact with him. Like, hey, you bring the things that I know this hasn't been what you want, but if you do these things, we're going to give you a little bit more of an opportunity to do the things that you want to do and you think you're good at on the floor. And I think it's been kind of a mixed bag. I don't think Kaminga's been. I think Kaminga's basically been a C level player for the Warriors this year, all told. I think he's had some A shifts in games. I think he's had some F shifts in games. I think he's been pretty solid in some other games. Like I just think that Kaminga's not the problem at all, But the thing that I will argue with Warrior fans with at this point is I don't think he's as big a part of the solution as a lot of Warrior fans think he is right now.
He's 18% from three, and what's even worse is Andrew Wiggins is 13.5 from three-point land.
That's not cutting it.
That's crazy. I guess when you talk about Jonathan Kaminga, and the point that I'm trying to make, and I don't know if the Golden State Warriors would ever admit to this, but because he has all this athleticism and because he teases you with he could be a star. Now, I know you don't buy into that as often as most.
He could be, but he's going to be a star in 25, 26.
Well,
or 26, 27.
Could. You're right. That's possible. But I'm one of those that bought in when he came in as a rookie, like, wow, you don't have to go out. You got somebody in-house. You don't have to make that trade over the offseason. But every year, I feel as though Jonathan Kaminga could break out, and if you find what it is you're looking for in terms of those 20 to 25 points from somebody that was underneath your own nose the whole time, that's a huge win for the Golden State Warriors. And I do believe that part of them feel as though, or felt as though, maybe, just maybe, if we give him enough of an opportunity, he could turn into that guy this year. But to your point, you're right. He is like a lot of those guys on the back end of the rotation. He has to earn his minutes. He has to play well in order to play and earn minutes in the next game. He doesn't have a set, we're going to close with you. We know who you are. We have a consistent level of comfort with your game. He's far, far from there.
He is. I will say, though, he is getting his 20 minutes. Like that, I do think Steve Kerr has 20 to 22 minutes penciled in for him every night. And look, there have been nights where he did not play well in the first half in some of these games where the Warriors were winning to the point where I think the last couple of years he wouldn't have played in the second half. And I think Steve Kerr has shown more confidence in him, and maybe Steve Kerr has to sit back and say, you know what, I wouldn't have played him the year before, but now I am going to give him that opportunity in the second half in the regular season, no matter what. And he's played better in those second halves. So I view Kaminga right now, and I get he's always somebody that's kind of polarizing because I think there are a lot of Warrior fans that think he's really good right now and getting better and that can push that star level now. And so I think the Warriors view it as he's getting better, and he is more trusted than he's been, and he is progressing, but there's a difference between that. Like, I tend to look at it more positively with Kaminga than negatively, but that's only because I haven't put him on that pedestal of expectation, as far as, a guy that's going to be this breakout, big-time, night-in, night-out contributor that's going to offset the fact that Wiggins and Klay Thompson aren't holding up their end. Like, no, to me, it was he could be your fourth leading scorer off the bench if Wiggins and Klay were doing their thing and Steph was doing what he's done, and then you got some action, and if he can prove to fit his game in the box of being a 25-minute a night player and be the fourth leading scorer, then it works. It doesn't work with him being the number two scorer because that means that your better players are not playing as your better players, and he's still not good enough to offset that. So, again, I think Kaminga at this point is the least of the Warriors' problems when you start looking at up and down the roster with Draymond being unavailable, Klay Thompson now struggling mightily. This thing snowballed on him after I thought he held it together for the first 8 or 9 games, the last 4, and then Andrew Wiggins. I think the Warriors would tell you he's slowly coming around, but when is that breakout game coming for Wiggins? The Warriors, absolutely not only need a breakout game from Wiggins, but you hit it. They need 18 from him. They need 16, 18 from him on 6 of 12 every night. If that needs to be the goal, but he needs to make threes. Like, that's the other part of this thing. When Wiggins is not making threes, when Wiggins is making threes over the last couple of years, the Warriors are almost unbeatable. When Wiggins is not making threes, then they're significantly more vulnerable. So to me, it's how Wiggins is getting his points in addition to just the points themselves.
He's in his career, he shoots it at 35%. Now, that's above the Mendoza line. That's not great, but 13% thus far this year should tell you just about everything you need to know.
He's going to get hot.
He's going to, and I still hold out that this guy there's something up. I don't know whether it's physical. We talked about this last week, that he had the rib injury, the cartilage injury at the end of last year against the Lakers. I think he sustained that like in Game 5 and Game 6. He was just wincing, and somebody asked him, how long before, and this is the season that just ended and the offseason had just begun, how long before you pick up a ball? And he's like, then this is like a 2-month, this is 6 to 8 weeks. So maybe he's still getting his win. Maybe he didn't have an offseason and this is it. I'm not making excuses for the guy, but I am not willing to accept that Andrew Wiggins lost it this quick. I'm not willing to go there. I'm not willing to say that Andrew Wiggins can no longer shoot a three, can no longer beat guys off the dribble. He can no longer be, an effective scorer for the Golden State Warriors. It's a perfect storm where Klay Thompson is being Klay Thompson at the beginning of last year, and Andrew Wiggins is just suddenly disappeared. And you have absolutely nobody. And just getting back to Jonathan Kaminga, and we can move on from JK, I'm one of those that drank the Kool-Aid. I thought that this guy would be a potential star in year 3. Now, you're right. If you think it through the lens of as a number 4 or 5 scorer, then he's doing well. But when I see him in year 3 and play this year, maybe because I had unrealistic expectations, his game's a bit of a disappointment. And while it's serviceable, I'm one of those that had loftier goals.
All right, he's Dan Devone. I'm John Dickinson. 888-957-9570. We've got 1 hour in the books. Comcast Business text line is open as well. We'll get into Draymond Green coming back. And then Steve Kerr joined Willard and Dibbs yesterday. We're going to re-rack that conversation coming up probably at 11 o'clock between now and noon as it's Warriors This Week, 95.7 The Game.
Hey, this is Richard Deitch, the host of the Sports Media Podcast. If you're interested in what's happening with all the places where you consume sports, the Sports Media Podcast has you covered. Here's longtime NFL and NBA announcer, Ian Eagle.
Would I find this entertaining if I was sitting on the couch watching the game, or would this be a nuisance? Would this get in the way? Does it enhance the enjoyment for the viewer, or at some point are you becoming...
Always live on the free Odyssey app. Warriors This Week continues on 95.7 The Game.
Hour number 2, John Dickinson, Dan Devone, 888-957-9570. Warriors have lost 5 in a row, from 6-2 to 6-7. They're still looking for a win on this homestand, 0-4 overall. Losses to Cleveland, Minnesota twice, and Oklahoma City. They'll get another crack at the Thunder tonight. That's 4:30 for Warriors Live from Chase Center as the Warriors take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Again, 5:30 the tip here on 95.7 The Game, and then the Warriors take on the Rockets on Monday before going to Phoenix the night before Thanksgiving, back at Chase for the Spurs a week from last night, the night after Thanksgiving. A lot to get into. Spent a good chunk of the first hour of the program talking about Steph Curry's injury and what's going on with Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins. Jonathan Kaminga, always a hot topic on this show. Where do the Warriors go from here? I think first and foremost, it's got to be Steph Curry coming back and being able to have everything else fall in line. We didn't, though, Dan, in the first hour, and should let everybody know also coming up in about an hour from now, we're going to roll back an interview from last night, if you missed it. Steve Kerr, his weekly conversation with Willard and Dibbs here at 95.7 The Game. Terrific conversation, insightful about all of the things that we're talking about in the first hour, and also some of the things we're going to get into here as it relates to Draymond Green. But we didn't talk a lot about Draymond in hour number 1, but we'll get into it here. For me, it's and the suspension and the incident with Rudy Gobert and all of it, for me, it's very similar to the conversation we were having about the big three plus Andrew Wiggins in the first hour. They're all connected. If you want Klay Thompson back, which the Warriors did, then you're going to deal with ups and downs. And some of the games, if you want Andrew Wiggins back, you're trusting that he's going to be a more consistent player than he was last year and be available. But if you want Draymond Green back, and the Warriors re-signed Draymond Green to that 4-year deal, you're signing up for it. And so, I don't view Draymond, Dan, as, well, he's got to change, and damn it, and they got to have a talk with him. And look, yeah, you can do all those things, and I'm sure Steve Kerr has, and he'll get into it when we re-rack that interview here at 11 o'clock. On 95.7 The Game. But to me, it's a matter of hey, this is what you signed up for. This is what you got. You take the good with the bad. And the Warriors told you in the summer that they're good with it. They still believe that the good outweighs the bad. And I don't think that the incident with Rudy Gobert was some catastrophic transgression. I know Steve Kerr spoke to the optics of it, and I know you saw it, and everybody saw it. I mean, when you freeze frame the video and Draymond's got Gobert in a headlock, it is a bad look, and it is a look that the NBA doesn't want to have, especially given the history surrounding Draymond Green, both with the officials and altercations with other players. But all that being said, reputation suspension for Draymond a little bit, sure. Well, but you know what? That's part of the deal at this point. Like he's going to get suspended 5 games for things that might get another player 1 or 2. Because, and look, Joe Dumars hasn't exactly hidden this, the guy handing out the punishment in the NBA office. I mean, really, the suspension this week and the suspension in the playoffs against the Kings, they've gone out of their way to say, look, man, every time you do something now, you're getting penalized more because we're taking into account the fact that there's prior incidents here. So that you're signing up for if you're the Warriors. So, again, I don't mean to be blasé or ho-hum, it is what it is kind of a thing, but this is part of it. Like, Draymond ain't changing.
No.
And he said he's not changing, and to be honest, you really don't want him to change, but when you miss 5 games, when Steph Curry's already out, you're legitimately putting your team in a tough spot.
This is who he is, and we know this. How many people do you know that change at the age of 33, 34? And if you are, and I'm talking about this goes beyond basketball. I mean, you can meditate, get introspective, see a therapist multiple times a week, or maybe it's the old line out of Seinfeld when he's talking to George. Not only do you need to see a therapist, you got to go to Europe and see one of those therapists around the clock if you really want to make changes. And this idea we had a talking to that he needs to sit down. We have to find out what's going on with him. Yeah, he'll tone it down for a month. Maybe 2 months. I don't know, maybe it's a week. But eventually he will be Draymond Green, and I think everybody in the building knows this. And you're right. When you extend him to the contract, you sat there and you said, okay, well, why are we going to do this? The reason is because he still has physical value to the Golden State Warriors. That's how you justify any contract. And you weigh in, okay, well, he's going to be Draymond. We understand that. And he's always been the backbone, if you will, or the personality of this team, as far as being that guy who's got everybody's back. He's an integral part of their success. Now, everybody outside of the Bay Area and even people within this market, he's polarizing and divides the room. I get it. But Draymond ain't changing. Very few people in my life, in my experiences, change after the age of, 10 or 11. You are basically who you are. Now, you can mask it, but to do whatever it's rage or how it manifests itself, this is who he is. Listen, if he wasn't going to change after decking his own teammate a year ago and all the drama that created, and he had that long press conference, I'm going to take time out. I need to deal with some stuff. And you're like, wow, this is going to be a different dude. No, a couple of months later, he's going WWE on Sabonis. So just deal with it, Warriors fans. This is who the guy is. And if you put hands on one of his teammates, especially if it's Steph or Klay, then I don't care if you're the Eiffel Tower or Stifle Tower. You're going to deal with my wrath. That's who he is. And quite frankly, I had very little issue with it and what took place the other night.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with it initially, but what it turned into is something that obviously puts the Warriors in a lesser position as far as winning basketball games here moving forward, and that's what it's all about. That being said, I don't really know what could have been done differently other than, you grab Rudy Gobert around the shoulders and you pull him back. And, I think we're probably having a different conversation. I think a lot of this is about the optics. A lot of this is about the freeze frame of the video that looked like Draymond was trying to choke Rudy Gobert out, frankly. And the league not wanting that, kind of an image in its game, from its players. And so I think that's where the initial baseline of a couple of games suspension comes from him, and then you tack on a couple of games based on the fact that it's a guy who's already been suspended for numerous different things, and here we are. So, does Draymond have to tone it down, be better, all those things? I mean, yeah, you're right. He'll stay. The irony is I think he's more under control now than he's ever been. Like, I think he knows now when he loses it. I think, that was sort of a new situation in the game on Tuesday night where I think, yeah, his instinct was a good instinct, which is to come to the aid of another player that was being threatened on his team by Rudy Gobert, and it's like, no, we're not having that. So I think the instinct is good in the context of team, but it can't turn into what it turned into, especially for him. Otherwise, he's going to miss a week and a half worth of action, and that doesn't help anybody. 888-957-9570. Let's get to the phones. Father Time in Napa gets us rolling here in hour number 2 at 95.7 The Game. Hey, Father Time.
Good morning. Good rainy morning up in Napa. Hey, I want to say, first of all, I appreciate your show just for the nuance, you're not just screaming at people. So thank you for that. So many Warriors things. I guess the second part is, who would not trade? Is there anybody out there that would trade 4 championships for a little drama? No, of course not. But the way this is kind of winding down, and I think there's you'd be foolish to think that this was on the upscale. We are winding this down, is frustrating because these are people we love, right? It's Thanksgiving soon, and you're going to go to your Thanksgiving. There's going to be that one member of your family. In my family, it's 2 members. It might go a little sideways. And I'm like, do I really want that? I'm 50 plus, and you're right. Dan, things don't change. They are who they are. So I want to hit Draymond last. This Steph Curry's the sun. Everything revolves around him. When the sun isn't shining, don't be surprised when things don't go well, right? That's just fact. He's obviously one of the greatest pound for pound, probably the greatest pound for pound, probably the greatest of all time. I just think when, Father Time, when age comes, it's hard for Klay. On the Kaminga side, dude didn't play high school basketball, didn't play college basketball, We played more basketball than he has. I think he's just fine. He's going to come along, but we can't expect these young men to come in to the league and just destroy. I mean, he's got a lot to learn, but he is undoubtedly a talent. I know you guys mentioned needing that 16 to 20 point scorer. Well, he's in Washington, and you can say what you want about his personality or anything else, but when you slug a guy with that potential in the face and then you ship him, you send a message. If they had done what the Warriors say they do, which is develop, find players, develop them, take care of them, we'd have been in better shape. Lastly, this is kind of a diatribe. I've been saying this for a couple of years. Draymond Green is a cancer, and you can live with cancer for a long time, and you can you can have a life with cancer. But imagine your sales team or your colleagues at work, and I know the NBA, I know professional sports is not real life, but he's Steph's guy, and Steph has every right to say, that's my guy, I'm going down with my guys. But this ship is going down with that guy, and you just have to accept that, and that's where it is. If you'd have traded Draymond 2 years ago, maybe you'd have that scorer, maybe you'd have a defender, but we don't. We got Draymond Green. And Thanksgiving's going to be a little chaotic. That's what I have to say. Take it easy, guys.
Great call. Good, great call, Father Time. Appreciate you checking in out in Napa. 888-957-9570. Appreciate the phone call there. And again, a good one on all fronts. I mean, this is, I don't know about trading Draymond 2 years ago. Literally, you just won an NBA championship at that point. But the Warriors are getting what they signed up for. And I think the Steph Curry component is key, because so often when things go awry for the Warriors, the conversation among the fan base, Dan, shifts to, well, they're not doing right by Steph Curry. They're wasting Steph, who's still playing at this all-time great level. And, I always kind of push back on that. And I think, well, they've won 4 NBA championships with him. Should it be 7? And maybe there's some Warrior fans out there that say, well, yeah, it should be. They should have won 16. They should have won 19. And, this or that. They would have had a better shot last year if this or that or the other. But the reality is, and Father Time hit on it, Steph Curry wants to ride it out with Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. And that's part, there isn't this, management's going to go to Steph Curry and say, hey, dude, and maybe it happens at some point down the line, but it wasn't going to happen last year, and it wasn't going to happen 2 years ago or even 3 years ago. But there's this notion of, like Joe Lacob or Bob Myers when he was the guy, and now Mike Dunleavy Jr. are going to go to Steph and be like, hey, man, you're awesome. We got to build it a different way around you to try and contend. Because I think they know that they're not going to get good enough players back at this point to where they trust the fit to the point where it's like you're gonna be a championship contender. Like they could make those moves and do it a different way, and then you're a different version of the same. I think they're holding on to the guys that they have because, one, they believe in them, two, Steph believes in them, and they feel that the guys they have still give them a better chance, even if it's not a great chance, but a better chance to contend for and maybe win a fifth championship than if you go shuttle it around and you get a couple other middling players on other rosters who've never done squat in their careers and say, well, we're going to run it back and win a title. Like, we see teams do that all the time, and they get farther away from being able to win a championship. I mean, there are plenty of teams that have done that after a few years. So, I get where the Warriors are coming from and wanting to ride it out until the wheels come off, but we should not forget that Steph Curry is committed to those two players in Klay Thompson and Draymond Green at a level that, I don't think anybody's going to go in with him as the franchise player and say, look, dude, you want this, we're doing that.
We talked about identity, and it's not easy to find. See the Los Angeles Clippers. You don't just simply assemble pieces from other teams and think you have an all-star cast and that you're going to win NBA championships. What the Golden State Warriors have built is so rare, and Steph recognizes it, right? He recognizes the sixth sense and the connective tissue with those guys on the floor. They have one of the most unique identities in the history of the game. And I hear a lot of this when people insinuate, well, listen, Draymond isn't going anywhere because Steph doesn't want him to go anywhere. There may be some truth to that, but also what you can't dismiss is, again, that Draymond Green is still a valuable asset to what this team is doing on the court. And his basketball IQ, I would put it up against anybody in the NBA, maybe in the history of the sport. This dude is seeing two steps ahead. He is still a high value to what it is that the Golden State Warriors are doing. That primarily is why he got that contract extension. Because at the end of the day, man, you just have to make things make sense when you're a GM and you're making business decisions that, okay, we'll give him the $100 million. We know that we're going to deal with some suspensions, but can he still be a contributor to your team? Let's not overlook what he means physically to the success when they're doing well, that being the Golden State Warriors and Draymond Green.
Let's go to Vinny in San Francisco next. 888-957-9570. Hey, Vinny, you're on Warriors This Week.
Hey, hi. The Warriors can't win a championship without Draymond Green. And the other championships they had 4. He was a big part of it. He's a negative, man. I mean, he's really hurting this team. Look at they lost 2 games in a row already because he's suspended 5 days. I believe when they had they could have won 5 championships when they played LeBron James in the finals. They were up 3-1, and he kicked LeBron James in the nuts, man, and he got suspended. That cost him a championship. And that's like the 49ers losing a Super Bowl, and that's also like the 49ers losing 3 games in a row. He hurts them, man. He's really hurting. And if you guys had problems at your job and you had a bad attitude, anger, your boss would send you to an anger management class. I can't understand why they don't send his ass to get some anger. He's got the worst issues. He's out of control, man.
Thanks, Vinny. Appreciate it. I mean, Vinny said it, right? He cost him one, and Draymond said that. He cost him 2016, and he did. He helped them win 4. He helped them win 4. So if you don't want him around, then you'd have maybe none or one or whatever. I will say none at this point. So, is he hurting him now specifically this week? Yes. Does he give him a chance if they can get the right? Because this is what it all boils down to, Dan. It boils down to the Warriors have to be good enough in the regular season to make the playoffs matter. Like, that's their whole, like, if you had to, just a nutshell of the season for the Warriors, it's be good enough in the regular season to where the playoffs matter. Because once you get in the playoffs, if you're healthy, I think they can make a run. Like, they can win a first-round series, and then you see who you're playing in the second round. And then if you're in a conference finals, it's championship experience against whoever, Denver or Phoenix or the Lakers or whatever it is. They feel like they can still get to that point. and be better than they were last year once they do. Now, maybe they're proven to be wrong on that because they're another year older, and some of these players that have been key components are not quite as good as they've been in prior years, and they wind up getting bit and they lose at that point because of it. But the goal is it's twofold. It's make the playoffs matter by getting through the regular season, and right now Draymond Green not being around is hurting them in the regular season. Steph Curry not being available because he's hurt is hurting them. Wiggins and Klay Thompson, it's hurting them in the regular season. And so, all the talk about it's going to matter more and they're going to be more consistent and all of that, like I bought into it, and for the first 8 games, it looked good, but at the first sign of adversity, this thing is looking like it's maybe falling apart, or at least if it's not falling apart, it's dipping back into last year where, this team just lingered 2 or 3 games above or below 500 all year until the end, and then had to get it going to eke into the 6th seed, which gave them an opportunity to beat Sacramento, but that was going to be all they would be able to accomplish at the end of the day.
We could do an entire show on the significance of the regular season as it relates to the NBA, because I'm with you. I think that part of the Golden State Warriors, especially when you're an older team, they're not sweating. Yes, you'd like to beat Minnesota and Cleveland, and you don't want to see Draymond suspended for 5 games. But early November is not what they're playing for. This is a team that has to be hitting their stride in the latter part of the season. And once you get into May or you get to the postseason, that's when the Golden State Warriors want to be at their optimal best. And you don't have to look any further. When I talk about the regular season, what's trending right now in the NBA, and the Los Angeles Lakers, they're perfect. They're exhibit A of a team that right now is like, yeah, I'll talk to the media because we lost, we're not playing well. But I guarantee you that LeBron James isn't worried about basketball right now. And the Miami Heat making that run out of the East, where'd they come from? The Los Angeles Lakers? If I was to tell you this time a year ago the Lakers are going to the Western Conference Finals, you'd have me committed. So I just think that when you talk about the regular season, and if we're to go big picture, the Golden State Warriors are looking to be playing their best basketball and being cohesive in the latter part of the season as opposed to putting an emphasis on it now.
I think that's fair, but if we start having the conversation about well, just get to the 6th seed and it's a long, like if we're starting to have the conversation about how long the season is and how they're going to figure it out eventually and it's all about April. And like, if we start having that conversation while this team is lingering a couple of games above or below 500 all year, they're done. They're not winning it. Like, I'm going to say that flat out. If we're having that conversation all year, and I don't feel like we're starting to have it yet because Warrior fans are so angry, and it's pretty obvious that Steph not being around the last couple of games is why they've looked so bad in the last couple of games. So I think we're not quite there yet, but the more the record drops, the more it's going to start to be, just get the 6th seed. Well, you know what? We saw how that looked last year. You can win a round against the right team, but you're not winning the title if you're going to do that. And so I'm going to push back on that hardcore this year as far as, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm not saying the Warriors, but no, they're going to have to get their asses in gear and be motivated when they have everybody. And I think that's the biggest disappointment to this point is the fact that when they were healthy and whole, they were healthy and whole for the first 9 games. And now 13 games in, they're under 500. So they've wasted the fact that they were healthy and whole for the most part through those first 9 games. And that means at some point now they're going to have another, in my opinion, 10-3, 11 and 10-5, 13 and 6 kind of a stretch over a significant chunk of the season to push away from 500. All right, 888-957-9570. We're halfway through here on a Saturday morning with you until noon. We'll get to Scott and Berkeley coming back. More phone calls, more texts. Warriors this week, 95.7 The Game.
Wow, look at these Black Friday deals on TVs. Samsung, Sony, and LG at the lowest prices of the year, even on their top-rated models. Now we can get that top-rated Samsung we were thinking about, but we'll need to get up early on Friday.
These are great deals, but why wait? Video Only has all these deals right now. We can get what we want today, and they're even offering no-interest financing.
So we can get these Black Friday deals right now at Video Only?
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
All right, welcome back. It's John Dickinson and Dan Devone. It's Warriors This Week here on 95.7 The Game. 888-957-9570. We're halfway through, but open up the phone lines this segment as well. And we're going to hear from Steve Kerr coming up at the top of the 11 o'clock hour here on 95.7 The Game, talking Draymond Green, talking Warriors at 6-7 after the 6-2 start. And you're going to want to hear what Steve Kerr had to say about Stephen Curry and his status for tonight's game as the Warriors and the Thunder set to go at 5:30 here on 95.7 The Game. And officially, Curry questionable for this one tonight as it is Game 5 of the 6-game homestand. Warriors still looking for their first win. Let's get back to the phones, Dan. What do you say?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do it. Let's go to Savala in Berkeley. Savala joining us here on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Savala.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm a relatively new fan. Like, I started paying attention to the Warriors and the NBA maybe 3 years ago as I just became more disillusioned with football. And first, I just want to thank y'all for helping to educate me about the game, like the mechanics, the rules, the psychological aspects. I just really appreciate that from y'all. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
And I guess I also I'm mostly thinking about Klay Thompson in this particular moment. Like, I appreciate that he is a championship player. He's an MVP type player, Hall of Famer. But I did not witness his supreme greatness on the court because I wasn't following the sport in that period of time. And on the one hand, I think that means, like, maybe I don't kind of give him the latitude that a lot of people think he's earned. Like, maybe I don't appreciate him the way I should. But on the other hand, I feel like it gives me kind of fresh eyes. And, like, I don't have the, like, nostalgia, sleepy crust in my vision when I watch him play. And it just seems like, I don't know, having missed that part of his career, it seems so crystal clear to me that he is, like, a number 2, number 3 player. And it's kind of frustrating and feels, frankly, like delusional and kind of absurd for years to hear people say, oh, we have faith that he's going to get hot. It's like, it reminds me of like a woman waiting by the phone for years for a man to call. It's like, it's not going to happen. I just feel, my perspective as a new fan is like, it's so clear to me that his days as that supreme type of player are over. And it's frustrating, frankly, to hear people talk as if at any moment it could come back. So that's just my thoughts.
Thanks, Savala. Great phone call. Appreciate it. Don't make that your last phone call here on 95.7 The Game. Want to make sure we get that, let you know that here first and foremost. Look, here's the deal as far as I always put it with Klay, Dan. The numbers, and I think this is the best way, like last year, he hit over 300 threes. He led the NBA in three-point makes. His shooting percentage was, I think, 41.5, which is excellent from three-point range. How he got there, though, what told the story. And look, he's not anywhere close to that level to this point this season, but as you pointed out in the last hour, he was bad in October and the first half of November, really up until about Thanksgiving last year, and then snapped out of it and was incredible in December and January in particular. Might have been the best month of his entire career. So I don't think it's going to be this bad, but at the same time, I think the best way to put it is the bad games are just wreckers. Like, you just can't, they're so bad. And so he's going to have hot games, and it's going to average out in terms of the totality of the numbers to where Klay Thompson can stand up at the podium on media day and basically say, you know what, I think everybody made too much of my demise because you look at my numbers. And it's not about the overall numbers. Like, Klay's right when he says that about the overall numbers. It's the individual games. It's how many bad games did you have versus great games, and can you win when you have bad games? And the problem is the bad games are really, really bad, and they're so bad that the Warriors almost can't win ever when he plays at that level, especially without Steph Curry. And so therein lies the rub.
Which is why I think stats oftentimes are misleading, because you can look at a stat line and say, well, you could live with that. Klay had a good year. But to your point, is it a recipe to win? Because that's what we're here for at the end of the day. Can you win with the way he's playing and the ebb and flow and the lack of consistency? By the way, Savala, right on. Because I think fresh eyes is sometimes what we all need. Because all of us, as we watch the Warriors, you can't just simply watch Golden State and assess Klay's play without, knowing what it is that he's contributed throughout the years and what he means to this dynastic run. But if you're going to be a relevant team going forward, that's the prism with which you have to look at this. You can only assess players with what it is that they're doing right now, because you cannot have any sort of emotional connection to Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, or Steph Curry. They have to be assessed on what it is that they're doing right now. What is it that they mean to the team going forward in terms of wins and losses? If you have any sort of emotional attachment, well, no, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. We cannot do that to Klay. You'll get passed over. That's not the way professional sports work in 2023.
And here's the thing for me also, Dan. If Klay Thompson scores 45 points tonight and makes 11 threes, I don't want him coming to the podium and standing on top of it figuratively and looking out at everybody in the media room saying, "See, y'all doubted me." Like, no. It's like, because nobody's questioning the fact that he's going to have great games. And again, if he has a game like that, which he's due for, it's going to bump the whole average up to a point where you're like, yeah, you know what? Klay's numbers don't look that bad. Well, guess what? You might have won the game where he was spectacular, but you lost 4 games because he was terrible. And so, in that instance. And I think, Klay specifically lived in that world last year where his good games were unbelievable and were the Klay of the past. The problem is it's just not as consistent as it used to be. And I'm telling you right now, there's still going to be 8 or 10 games this year where it's like, wow, that was vintage Klay. And he hit 7, 8, 10, 12 threes in a game. But again, if they're fewer and farther between, and the games where he's 5 of 16 are automatic L's, and the games where he's 1 of 10 are automatic L's, then you can look at that and say he didn't have as great a season as the numbers would indicate he did. And that's just the reality. So I get it. Klay's frustrated, and he's trying to keep it together, I think, this year and be in a better headspace and not lash out or feel like he has to vent at people who maybe are being critical or questioning or don't respect the Hall of Fame caliber player that he's been throughout his career. Like, I understand where that frustration lies. But when he has that breakout game, which is coming, I don't want the standing on the table like, bleep you, bleep you, bleep you, bleep you, you all doubted me. Because it ain't about the fact that you can do it here and there. It's, can you do it can can you have an 8 of 16 the night after you go 11 for 13? You know what I mean? Can you have a 5 of 10 the night for 20 points? 3-point range. You have 5 of 10. Have a 8 of 13 kind of a game overall the night after you go for 45 or 50 to help your team win. That's the question. It's not. Do you have 8 to 10 games where you look like it's 2016 all over again? Scott in Berkeley next here on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Scott.
Hey, John. Hey, Dan. How you doing?
Doing well.
Good. Getting back to something you said in the last segment when you talked about the reality of a team not winning 4 series from the 6th spot. A lot of people don't remember this. The last team that won 4 series without home court advantage was the 95 Rockets. And, of course, in that case, you're talking about Akeem. You're talking about the trade for Clyde Drexler. You're talking about Robert Horry. You're talking about Kenny Smith. You're talking about Sam Cassell. And, of course, on top of everything else, I think. And
defending champs, those guys that you mentioned, right, aside from Drexler.
And they were defending champs. Now, the difficulty of this week, and the irony to me in this week was that Draymond got tossed on Sunday for pushing Donovan Mitchell, right?
Yes.
And then he gets tossed on Tuesday for basically putting Samoa Joe's Cohiba clutch on Gobert. Now, if you were going to talk about 2 former teammates that would have swung on each other, it would be Mitchell and Gobert. There's something about Rudy that irritates players in the league. And I mean, what Draymond did was inexcusable. But as soon as I saw it was Gobert, it was kind of like there's a history there, not just with Draymond in particular, because I know Draymond made fun of him when Gobert cried about not making the Western Conference All-Stars. I guess what was it, 6 years ago, something like that. But I mean, Rudy has done some weird stuff. I mean, I always remember the night that the league shut down in 2020.
Yeah.
Remember the press conference? Yeah. And that came into my mind too. But, I mean, the difficulty of watching this team is that the ultimate philosophy of it is if you miss 6 in a row, you're going to take the 7th shot. And, I mean, this is kind of what we're kind of living with, really, with both Klay and with Wiggins. So it's going to be an interesting and difficult ride. I don't know if it's over, and that's where I think that we're all kind of concerned with. But the story I go back to is I never thought it was over with the Pistons when they did the walk-off after Game 4 against the Bulls.
But it was.
Well, it was, but the real tipper was 2 years later. Because early in that year, at practice, Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer got into it. And from what I remember of it, it was a full-bore swinging match. That's the point, to me, I look for. So, I mean, we're riding it out, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, and thanks for the call, Scott. Good phone call, as always. I mean, well, the Warriors, I mean, it wasn't Steph and Draymond. I mean, is that what Scott's getting at, Dan? When Steph and Draymond go at it and Steph's like, all right, bro, I'm done with you now. Like, is that the moment that it all ends? Is that kind of where Scott was going? He lost me a little bit there at the end. And it was over, by the way, when the Pistons walked off. It was over. They were never the same.
And just one more thing with Rudy Gobert before we get to the next call. Don't forget, we can get on Draymond for punching teammates. In that timeout a year ago, Rudy took a swing at Kyle Anderson out there in Minnesota. So Rudy's got some warts on him.
Well, and Scott's right. Players around the league don't like Gobert. No. Draymond in particular, like they've gone back and forth. You've got Gobert with the calling clown behavior after the game. Gobert called what Draymond did clown behavior. Basically said, which I thought was interesting, said, hey, he doesn't want to play without Steph. And the irony is that's a conversation we've had on this radio station. So it's not like that's a crazy take to bring up. When you go back a couple of years with games that Steph has missed, those tend to be the games. And I think in the last week it's been coincidental more than anything. But somebody on the Comcast Business text line had said, it's 7 of the last 11 games Steph has missed. Like or 7 of the last 11 Draymond incidents or when Steph's out or something like that. So it does tend to happen when Steph is out that Draymond loses his cool. Now, maybe that is the fact that Draymond feels like with Steph out, he has to be on one at a different level to help the competitive nature of the team win, without him. I mean, I'm just throwing theories at the wall here, but that's something we have to. I do think there's been times where Draymond hasn't maybe wanted to play when Steph's been out or been more apt to be like, bleep it. All right, I'll go tonight. I don't feel like that's what was going on the other night at all, though.
No, that was heat of the moment. And I'm with you. I agree that maybe there's some legitimacy to that theory, but not the other night. The other night was somebody's got Klay Thompson around the neck. I don't think he was, processing, well, Steph's not here, I should go grab Rudy Gobert. Now, that was just pure reactionary. I think that was all, that was the emotion that defines Draymond Green, good or bad.
888-957-9570 from Scott in Berkeley. We go to Will in Berkeley next year on Warriors This Week. Hey, Will.
Yo, fellas, what's going on? I just finished my Thanksgiving shopping.
Awesome.
You guys.
What's your Will, give me your favorite side off book side dish, right? That's not mashed potatoes, that's not stuffing. Give me your go-to something that you do that's maybe a little different.
Wow. I do a mash of let's see, Brussels sprouts,
okay,
parsnips. It's like a vegetable mash, because we're eating unhealthy stuff. So I'm trying to make a healthy side dish.
I like it. Okay, I like it. Now the Brussels sprouts is a good call. I'm good with the Brussels sprouts. I like a little mac and cheese too with the like this kind of. I know for a lot of people that is traditional, but in the last few years I've kind of gotten into the mac and cheese but the Brussels sprouts is a good call. I like that.
I'm willing to bet that the word parsnips has not been used frequently on 95.7 The Game. That might be a first time.
No, parsnips.
No doubt.
Parsnips word comes out during the holidays. Parsnips is a big word. So.
Yeah, no. Will, I didn't mean to derail you, but you were making me hungry when you said that, so I kind of wanted to picture the dinner table there for a second.
No, it's good. I'm getting ready for that. Food, But
absolutely. But go ahead, man. What do you got on the Warriors?
I've been playing basketball for a long time, and I think about it as these guys are getting older, and they're getting older on the court. And they have a lot of just orneriness about it to them right now because I think the age is catching up to their bodies. And, I think they're sort of looking at the league and they're saying, man, all these young guys are coming up. And, I mean, look at OKC. OKC is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the next couple of years. And so I think that it's important for them to kind of ride that out, because I like looking at Steph. I like the fact that he leaves it all on the court. He's been playing his ultimate best, trying to just focus on the game. I think for some reason Klay can't focus on the game. He's focusing on other things. I don't know what those other things are, but he doesn't have his shot right now. I mean, to shoot, what was he, 5? He shot 5 points the other day.
Yeah, it was 1 of 10 the other night after a couple of 5 of 16s, and then he had the ejection mixed in there. So not a good homestand. 5 of 16, 5 of 16, ejection in the first 2 minutes, 1 for 10.
Yeah, and it's something emotional going on with him. And I think, who knows what Wiggins is thinking about, but I think overall, Klay, Draymond, Wiggins, they got to come to Jesus moment. They got to figure out what is going on that we cannot function throughout the steady course of the game. I don't know if it's averages. They're like, okay, we can lose about 10 or 15, and then we'll come out, at the end, still in the playoffs. But I don't know. There's something going on with these guys. They got to really figure it out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the call. I think it's a great point, Dan, about, and thanks, Will, OKC and Minnesota. I think Sacramento's in that boat. Clearly, although the Warriors, for whatever reason, have been able to keep the upper hand on Sacramento, beating them in the playoff series. They beat them a couple times here to begin the season. The Kings are hot now. They've won, I think, 5 in a row to coincide with the Warriors losing 5 in a row after they had gotten off to opposite starts. But I think there are these young teams. Minnesota's won, OKC, like I mentioned, Sacramento, and I think they're coming. Anthony Edwards has talked all kinds of stuff about how he wants to beat the Warriors more than anything. You mentioned the Thunder, really with their drive and kick, open offense, small ball, bunch of wing players, and Chet Holmgren. How they've tried to do their version, although more drive and kick of what the Warriors have done offensively, and they're putting up some big time numbers. And I do think that's part of it is the Warriors have been at the top of the mountain and they've been looking down at everybody else, and now I do think they are starting to look at some of these other teams and they're like, damn, like night in, night out, this stuff's hard compared to what it used to be, because there are all these young guys that are now in positions of trying to get where they got to a decade ago.
Yeah, and you wonder if that leads to some of the physical frustration that they can see or they know that the ending is imminent. They'll never admit it publicly, but knowing that maybe this ride is sort of coming to an end, not there yet. So does that sort of play into sort of the erratic behavior by that of a Klay Thompson and sort of the physical outburst by one of, Draymond Green?
888-957-9570, 888-957-9570. John Dickinson and Dan Devone here. It's Warriors This Week on a Saturday at 95.7 The Game, as we are with you each and every Saturday morning from 9 a.m. until noon here, as the Warriors and the Thunder are going to go again tonight here on 95.7 The Game. Warriors looking for a home win, for crying out loud. 1-5, completely negating the Warriors' 5-2 start on the road. Mr. D in San Francisco next here. What's going on, Mr. D?
Hey, what's going on, guys? What's going on, guys?
Hey. Doing well.
So I want to talk about Draymond. I'm not defending what he did, although it's an unwritten rule that if you go try to break a fight up, you go for your guy, you don't go for my guy. But even outside of that, Draymond, he does stuff, but it's like everything he does, they dig up all the old stuff that he did. It's not like he didn't get penalized for it. He got fined. He got suspended. So why are we digging that stuff back up? I think that's a little bit unfair. And a 5-game suspension, to me, in my opinion, was too much, because it was based on some stuff that he did before. And it shouldn't have been. He was penalized for that.
I don't disagree with you, and I get the unwritten rule part of Gobert's going after Klay, and so Draymond's trying to get Gobert off of Klay at that point. And you're right. I mean, he's ejected from that game in that moment. He gets fined. And, look, Draymond was going to get suspended. I thought it was going to be a 2 or a 3-game suspension. But, again, it was to me, what took it to another level, Dan, was the screenshot. It was the freeze frame of Draymond with the headlock on Gobert, and he's pulling him back. I mean, it looks like he's choking him out. And again, I know that in real time, that's not what was going on necessarily, but it's the image. And Draymond's kind of snarling like he's ready to take Gobert out, like period. And so, I think that's and Steve Kerr spoke to this in his pregame press conference the other day. It's just a bad look, and it's the look that Adam Silver doesn't want. So I think that in and of itself was going to get him probably a 2 to 3 game suspension. And then I think he got another 2 or 3 games based on the past incidents. And we can debate whether it's fair or not. And I hear where Mr. D is coming from as far as it maybe not being fair. But whether it's fair or not, that's Draymond's reality now. And it's the Warriors' reality for having Draymond Green on their roster, even if you don't think it's right.
Yeah, I don't think Dumars and I don't think Silver can ignore the priors and played a role in the 5-game suspension. It was the length of how long he had him around the neck. You're right. I think somebody counted out like 9 seconds. I don't know if he lets him go after like 4 or 5, if it's a different outcome. But
I think if he grabs him around the shoulders, it's a different outcome.
And then
I really do.
I'd like to get everybody's sort of response on this, because I know I'm probably alone in this, and I know, yes, it's a bad look for the NBA, and Adam Silver's like, I got to eradicate that. But is it? Because that was one of those playing games. Now, nobody got hurt, thankfully. Nobody went out with an injury. There were no serious punches thrown and or landed. And really, at the end of the day, maybe Adam Silver and the powers that be at the NBA out there in their New York offices, there might be a wry smile like, you know what, man? Everybody's getting, excited about, because that was one of those playing a tournament game for the in-season tournament, and people are taking this serious. And although, you know what they say, all attention is good attention, and now it wasn't, it wasn't as ugly as some, incidents can be in the NBA. Going back to the brawl in Detroit, I mean, it was. Well, I'm saying if you were to look at this from sort of a financial, and they're doing this to create some level of excitement and going up against the NFL and college football, and I think they accomplished that with what took place the other night with Draymond.
Well, I think it's good, to be honest, and people don't like when I say this. I think having some bad blood is good for the league. I think Gobert and Draymond not liking each other is good for the league. I think Anthony Edwards running his mouth on the Warriors is good for the league. Like, I think all of that's actually good. Rivalries are good. Players not liking each other is good. It's just a matter of how do you toe that line. All right, 888-957-9570. We will get to who we have left on the board here when we come back, and then we're also going to re-rack the Steve Kerr interview with Willard and Dibbs from yesterday. That's all straight ahead here. Warriors this week on 95.7 The Game.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious power through your day.
San Francisco. Always live on the free Odyssey app. Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Hour number 3, John Dickinson, Dan Devone. We will get to more phone calls coming up here in hour number 3 as we're going to be with you until noon. Good first couple of hours, lively conversation, a lot of phone calls throughout the 10 o'clock hour. We appreciate it. Comcast Business text line is open as well. Trying to make sense, Devone, are we of the Warriors' 5-game losing streak, and a lot going on there. Steph Curry out for a couple of games here. We'll see if he's going to be back tonight. As we're going to hear from Steve Kerr coming up momentarily in his interview with Willard and Dibbs from last night. You've got Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins continuing to struggle. Draymond Green suspended, not only for the game on Thursday night, but tonight's game, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of this following week before he'll come back when the Warriors play Sacramento again on the 28th. But just trying to figure out how this team can get a win and how big picture they can get themselves back on track toward being what they believe they are, Dan, which is a championship contender.
It's just really difficult without Steph Curry. And you didn't need me to get out of bed and tell everybody that this morning and turn on a live mic, but that's sort of just to sum it up and boil this thing down is, can you win basketball games even when Steph does return? Can you win games when Steph is having an off night? Or, again, can somebody offset the scoring from Steph? And I think that that's the hard reality that they're trying to figure out right now. And another game is another opportunity for Klay and Andrew Wiggins, more importantly, I think, to break out. Will tonight be the night? That's sort of how I see things going forward.
Will tonight be the night? That's a key question there. All right, let's get to Steve Kerr and his weekly interview with Willard and Dibbs here on 95.7 The Game from last night. And it began with Willard asking Steph about his injury status. And again, this was about 5 o'clock last night. So we'll roll that. We'll come back. We'll react to it here on 95.7 The Game.
Would like to start off right away by asking how Steph Curry looked in practice today and what's the plan there? Yeah, he's feeling a lot better, and he went through all of practice. And plan is just to see how he feels in the morning. But I think there's a decent chance he'll play tomorrow.
While we're in the injury space, any update you can give us on GP2 and just how he came out of last night's game?
Yeah, he rolled his ankle pretty badly coming down on Chet Holmgren's foot, and so he was in a boot today. He had an MRI. It wasn't anything that looked terrible on the imaging, but he's definitely going to miss at least tomorrow, and then kind of day to day from there.
Steve Kerr with us here on Willard and Dibs 95.7 The Game. Coach, look, no getting around it. Got a little losing streak going on here. There's some obvious reasons for it, and then I'm sure some not so obvious. How would you sort of describe the general sense of how you're feeling about everything right now?
Well, I've been around long enough to know that things are never as bad as they seem, and they're never as good as they seem, So you just have to try to keep some perspective. We got off to a really good start, and now we've hit a little wall. We've had some tough matchups. We've had some absences, some suspensions, and lost some of our momentum. So we just got to bounce back, and we'll play better, and we'll find a groove. I like our roster. I like our guys. It's just one of those stretches in the season where shots aren't going in, and we're not quite finding our rhythm.
One of the positives from last night was Jonathan Kaminga and a nice performance, and he mentioned in the postgame how he had some conversations with some people. Were you one of the people who spoke to JK, and what did you think of the response from Jonathan Kaminga in terms of his effort last night?
I am one of the people he spoke with, as a matter of fact.
Nice. I got that one correct. I had guessed that you were one of the people. Score one for the Dipper, Steve.
That is my job, after all. But JK's a great young guy, and being a young player in the NBA is not easy. Actually, being a player, period, in the NBA is not easy. There's pressure and stress on all these guys, and there's a lot to learn as a young guy, and there's going to be some ups and downs. And the biggest thing for JK is to plow through the adversity. The adversity hits everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. You look at our team. Steph and Wiggs are, or Klay and Wiggs are kind of going through it right now. It's been a bit of a struggle. They've got their stuff they've got to fight through, and JK, same thing. Young guy trying to find his place, trying to be consistent, and the biggest thing in this league is keeping your energy and your spirit up, and keep working, through the down times. And I think it's a difficult thing to learn. It's easier said than done. So I think that was the nature of the message to JK over the last couple of days. He responded really well and played well last night.
Yeah, it was a good game for him, Coach. The whole thing is real interesting to me, especially when you go back to what happened in the playoffs with him last year, where it was widely sort of evident that he was not kind of happy with the role. I listened to what he said last night, saying that he needed to have a lot of people talk to him to check him. And I sort of came out with the perception that there have been conversations with him over maybe even the last couple of years just about general effort. Is that a fair perception?
I think his effort is fine. It's sometimes he loses his energy, and his body language goes bad, and so it may look like effort, but I think it's just more. He gets down on things, and he just has to understand that stuff matters. Body language matters, energy, spirit, taking joy in others' success. All of that stuff goes into being part of a winning team. And the hard thing when you're one of 15 guys on a team, things aren't always going to go your way. It's one of my favorite qualities of Steph Curry. He takes more joy in others' success when he's on the bench and somebody gets hot. You see Steph's antics on the bench. That goes so far to helping a team win. And I get it. It's easier to do when you're Steph Curry and you're going to get your 30 points every night. But it's real. It's authentic. And young players have to understand that too. They all have to be part of the group and take joy in the group's success and bring life and energy regardless of the circumstances. And when the team does that, when all the guys in the team do that, it's just much easier to win.
Yeah, the phrase "wallflowers" and powders was ringing in my head as you were giving that answer. But I'm not saying that you were indicating that about Jonathan Kaminga. But I think that his performance last night would definitely not be put underneath that category. A question that I have is about Andrew Wiggins and where his energy can come from in terms of, returning Andrew to being the player that he was a couple of seasons ago.
I think Wiggs is really trying. He's last night was good. He got to the rim multiple times, didn't settle, for the fadeaway jumper, 15-footers. He kept turning and getting to the rim and gave himself some easy buckets, and that was important. We need him to be aggressive, and as long as he keeps doing that, I'm confident that his shot will follow. He's got a long track record of being a good three-point shooter. This is a spot here over 12 games where he hasn't shot the three well. So I lean into the prior 7 or 8 years. I think that's a much better indicator of what kind of shooter Wiggs really is.
Coach Kerr with us here on Willard and Dibbs, 95.7 The Game. Steve, you brought up the suspension for Draymond, and I found it very interesting, sort of the tone that you took to the podium last night with regard to what you said about it. There's no doubting the organization has had Draymond's back for years. This sounded a little bit more firm from you. Why sort of the change in tone? Well,
I think, watching the tape, it was bad, and there's no getting around that. And, as I said yesterday, I didn't mind Draymond getting Rudy off of Klay because that was appropriate, but he just needed to let go immediately. And once Rudy was off of Klay, Dray needed to let go. Instead, he basically got him in a headlock, and it was a bad look for Draymond, bad look for us, bad look for the league, and particularly coming on the heels of the ejection 2 nights earlier. And Draymond knows. We need him. We're in a little bit of a rut here. We got to have everybody contributing, and so now another ejection, now a suspension, and this hurts the team, and so all of that stuff is real, and Draymond understands that and knows that, and he's going to try to be better.
I'll tell you what, Coach, I'm sure you know this. I think the whole fan base was nodding their head in agreement when you said yesterday, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's got to find a way to be him, but not have it end up like this. And when I heard you say that, I immediately thought, okay, we've all sort of believed through the years Draymond is this one person. Like, he can't not be Draymond. So how do you go about doing that?
Well, those are things that are being worked on behind the scenes. I'm not going to go into detail on that stuff because that's private. But he's working on it. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, and it's a fine line because we all want Draymond to be aggressive and engaged and passionate, and yet it is a fine line in terms of when he steps over it. Usually things happen like they did the other night. So with Draymond out now for the time being, what do you do to try to replace him? We know he's one of one in terms of his unique abilities, but how do you try to find somebody to come in there and replace his defense and his rebounding particularly?
Well, I like this roster. We have a deep roster, and we have a lot of guys who can play. And I think the trick is really kind of sorting through the roster and figuring out, which combinations work the best, and who's going to play with whom and all that. So I think right now it's early in the season. Way too soon to be too worried about anything. It's more of an opportunity. So J.K. will get that opportunity to start, and maybe Trace will get some minutes with Draymond out. And we'll look at some of these different combinations. So I look at it as an opportunity for our young guys to step forward.
Steve, a rough game for Klay Thompson last night for sure. And I know you mentioned the defense that OKC was throwing at him. Over the offseason, there was so much talk from Klay even about the frustrations that he was feeling. And to my eye, he still sort of looks to be feeling that frustration. What's your assessment of his play and sort of his emotional state?
He's just pressing. He's just taking tough shots because he's trying to get himself going. If you look at the history of Klay's career, he usually gets off to slow starts. I mean, the numbers would back that up. I guess he's played, 12, 13 years now. I would be willing to bet that 7 or 8 of those years, he got up to a slow start the first month, first 10, 15 games. So the other thing that's happened is in all of those years is he's recovered and played really well. So I think I have no doubt that he'll get out of it, but he is pressing and he's taking tough shots. And I think he just needs to embrace that the attention that he draws is enough to help our team score. If he's got 2 guys on him like he did last night and he just moves the ball and we do our jobs, then we're going to end up with a good shot. And Klay has to recognize that and just accept it, especially until Steph is back, because that's how teams are going to treat him. It's the ultimate respect.
I'm just looking at his splits, Coach, and his October numbers for his career are ghastly as they relate to the rest of his shooting percentages from November through April. So your suspicions have been confirmed. You can go ahead and run with that, courtesy of your guy, the Dibber, in Basketball Reference as well. Steve, how do you adjust to teams in the way they're now defending you? Because it's not only running Klay off the line. It feels like they're obviously trying to run Steph off the 3-point line as well. Do you have to try to tweak the offensive approach a little bit, knowing that teams are now coming at you from behind the 3-point arc?
Well, that's not really that new. I mean, everybody's been trying to do that for years. I remember Greg Popovich used to put defenders on the top side of Steph and Klay when they had the ball 30 feet from the hoop. He would just literally force them to drive underneath the 3-point line. So it's not anything new. I think it's more a case of us needing to find a little better rhythm, maybe, even streamline our play calls and just run a handful of things and execute them better. And if we do that, then we'll start knocking down shots. We're getting shots that we can make for sure, that we should make. But I think as a staff, we've got to do a little better job of helping the players find a good rhythm. And with that rhythm, the shot should get a little bit easier.
Steve Kerr, coach of the Dubs, obviously, here on Willard and Tibbs, 95.7 The Game. Coach, we kind of put it out to our audience throughout the day. What would you like to ask Coach Kerr? And we got this one a whole lot. Why not more minutes for Moses? So why not more minutes for Moses Moody?
Well, it's just a math equation, We've got a lot of guys who can play, and so if Moses is going to play, it's got to be in front of the list, and the list includes Wiggs, Gary Payton, Klay, Kaminga. So and even Draymond, and when Draymond is out there, so we've got a ton of guys who can play. We're doing some things as a team to try to get certain actions going, certain players going, and Moses is doing a really nice job. He's playing well, and he's going to continue to get more minutes. But it's a lot of guys. So if you want to play one guy more, you got to sit another guy, and that's there's kind of a domino effect there.
And one of those guys is the new guy, Brandon Pajmski, who seems to have vaulted himself up the rotation. How enthused are you by his recent spate of play, and especially after you praised him pre-game, and then he went out and balled out? That has to make you feel quietly a little bit good.
Well, we just, know what we see every day in practice. And so he's looked great since the start of training camp. And Brandon's got a really good feel. He's a different player terms of he's more of a kind of a 1-2. He's a guard who creates plays but also connects the game. The ball really moves when he's out there. And he's constantly cutting into spots and forcing the defense to react. So Brandon's a young player who has great feel and makes everybody better. So he's definitely going to see minutes.
I wonder if you'd expand on that. When Steph and Draymond and everybody are back, what do you see as his role going forward?
He's got to play. He's got to play. The game gets easier for everybody else when he's out there. And so it's going to be tough. I mean, we've got, like I said, I think we've got 12 guys who legitimately can be in the rotation. And when everybody's healthy, that means there's going to be some people who are sitting, and it's not an easy decision as a coaching staff. And where we are right now, we have a lot of guys who are capable and for sure can be in that rotation, but we also need to find the combinations that are going to help us win, because right now we're just sort of experimenting and not gaining much traction, and we got to go get a couple of wins, and guys really have to emerge and help us win, and those are the guys who will play.
Yeah, you've never suffered 6 consecutive losses other than that 15-50 season that we all have discarded from our memory banks. So hoping to get a win to avoid that ignominy. You were talking about combinations. How do you like Chris Paul with that second unit? I know it's been a little different with Steph out and now Draymond out, but is Chris finding comfort being a part of that second group?
Yeah, he's really he's such a dynamic point guard, does so many things that regardless of the combination, he's going to help the group. But if you're a pick and roll player, you want spacing, you want to have a lob threat, you want to have another playmaker on the floor. I mean, it's just the game becomes easier the more we can space the floor with Chris out there. So, we'd like to surround him with shooting and a dive man and that make the game as easy as possible for him, for sure.
He discussed Chris Paul, liking the fit when the Warriors have everybody with Chris Paul leading that bench group, and that had been off the 6-2, 6-3 start, a portion of this Warriors team that had played pretty well, and even, I think, better than expected, dominantly well. But it's a matter of getting everybody else healthy and back in the fold. What stuck out to you? I was jotting a bunch of things down, Dan, that we can get into in the final segment here. But what was your biggest Steve Kerr takeaway?
Well, there are a few. I think the conversation that he had with Jonathan Kaminga, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that. I think that was really informative, that he pulled Jonathan Kaminga aside. And I think that the analogy he gave of how Steph Curry just has that joy of playing the game and how he's so happy for other players doing well while he's on the bench. What I read into that is that this goes back to the powders and wallflowers, and I think whether it was, I don't know, an indirect dig at Jonathan Kaminga, I don't know, but I think the way that I sort of reading between the lines is that when he's on the bench, he can't sit there with his arms folded in that sort of pouting position because, people are watching. Big Brother's always, the cameras are always on you the minute you step out of that locker room, and you're giving off a signal. And I think it was not so much of his play, because you see it somewhat on the floor a little bit where he hangs his head, but also on the bench, because I notice it when they have, as we call in the television industry, these cutaways, and you see the bench, and you see Jonathan King at the end of the bench, and he looks disengaged. And I think what Steve Kerr was saying, hey, listen, you don't have to be on the floor producing to have an impact on this team. Look at Steph Curry and look at the joy he has with his teammates in celebrating their success. I need a little bit more of that from you.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it makes you think something that I hadn't really thought, which is, maybe on some of those nights where he hasn't played well, he's sitting over there and he's thinking about not playing well, but he's also looking out on the court at maybe other players who are playing well, and he's thinking, well, damn, I'm not going to get the run that I want if these guys are playing well, and then it sort of leads to that, that feeling or that look of maybe being not supportive of your teammates who are playing well. So, yeah, good takeaway there. We'll get into more of what Steve Kerr had to say coming back. 888-957-9570. We will reiterate some key points and reopen up the phone lines as Warriors This Week rolls on. One final segment here on a Saturday with JD and Devone on 95.7 The Game.
Hey, folks, this is it. The best weekend of the year for buying a TV. Forget inflation, because now you've got deflation with Black Friday pricing on top-rated brands like Samsung.
are things that are being worked on behind the scenes. You know, I'm not going to go into detail on that stuff because that's private. But he's working on it. That's all I can tell you.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
All right, welcome back. Final segment. Steve Kerr there, as heard last night, right here at 95.7 The Game, his weekly interview with Willard and Dibbs. And we reran that for you at the top of the 11 o'clock hour, and Coach Kerr talking about what's going on. The guys pressing him on what's being done to try and get Draymond Green any potential help that he needs as far as basically finding a way to be himself, but not having it turn out the way it has here over the course of the last week with the ejection on Sunday and then the incident on Tuesday, which leads now to a 5-game suspension, Dan.
What's funny is that we re-racked the interview, and you could also re-rack that soundbite from Steve Kerr that he's working on some things. I don't mean to diminish what it is that he's going through, but we've been down this road before, specifically last year after he nailed his teammate Jordan Poole, and there was a lot of that sort of somber moments at the mic with Steve Kerr, like he's got to work on some things, and you're thinking that this guy is going to change. I don't mean to say that anybody's lying here, but I'm a little skeptic at this point that Draymond is going to change, and Draymond, I think at the end of the day, is going to be Draymond eventually.
He is, and look, I mean, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I thought the tone of the way Steve Kerr said it made me think maybe there is some kind of anger management or counseling or some person that maybe he's talking to about staying under control in heated moments. I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to project some of the stigmas that come with that, which can be negative, which I think can be why that can be kept private. We all have things going on in our personal lives that maybe can bleed over. I know if you remember last year with Draymond and the incident with Jordan Poole, he said flat out there were some things going on, maybe outside of the facility that bled into the facility. So he came in, and we've all done this. You go into work and you're not ready to work, or you're gonna work and you're gonna get ready to work, but you're thinking about something else, and yet you got to get through that day and be able to be productive and do your job without anybody hopefully even noticing that something's wrong, right? I mean, that's the goal, I think, of everybody. And sometimes they're more difficult than others, for individuals to show up and. We've all been there, man, where it's like it's like, okay, how am I going to get through this? And I really can't wait till the shift's over, and I'm going to, I can get back to focusing on what's really on my mind. And so, again, without prying or getting too personal about what Steve Kerr was talking about, and we don't know specifically, but I kind of thought that the tone that he took made me think, all right, there is somebody that's maybe assigned to, at least having some conversations with Draymond, and then it's up to Draymond whether to discuss the level at which that's going on or what type of maybe counseling or therapy it would be.
Just to move off of Draymond for a second, the Moses Moody scenario and the relationship with him with Steve Kerr, I still get the feeling that something's amiss. And I know he addressed it, and it sometimes just comes down to numbers, right? I think he used the word math. It's just like, well, if he's going to get minutes, I got to take minutes from somebody else. But he's never very overly effusive about Moses Moody. Or maybe that's just my interpretation. And maybe there isn't anything there. But it just seems, I don't know, at times a little bit odd for a guy that I think has done, everything, if not more, that's been asked of him and has been a good, solid player for the Golden State Warriors and has nothing but a huge upside in front of him. And yet, he gets passed over from time to time. Maybe there's a little loony factor working here that because he doesn't pout and because he's such a nice guy that he gets taken advantage of. I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, let's hear the clip because Steve Kerr was asked about it. So let's rerun the clip, and then I do have some thoughts on sort of deciphering what I think it meant.
Well, it's just a math equation, We've got a lot of guys who can play, and so if Moses is going to play, it's got to be in front of, the list. And the list includes, Wiggs, Gary Payton, Klay, Kaminga. So, and even Draymond, and when Draymond is out there. So we've got a ton of guys who can play. We're doing some things as a team to try to get certain actions going, certain players going. And Moses is doing a really nice job. He's playing well, and he's going to continue to get more minutes. But it's a lot of guys. So if you want to play one guy more, you got to sit another guy, and that's there's kind of a domino effect there.
All right. So who were the players that Steve Kerr mentioned? They were all forwards. Wiggins. Klay, well, I guess they weren't all forwards, but Klay's a guard. But it was Wiggins, Kaminga, GP, who's more of a forward than a guard in the Warriors, at least offensively, although he does defend guards. But it's Wiggins, Kaminga, and even Draymond on the one hand, and then it's Klay on the other hand, and then GP sort of a hybrid. It's basically, and I think he's found his way in this position, and this is where it's tough. I think at times he's found his way into being the third string, like on a given night, he's the third string small forward or he's the third string two guard. Depending upon, if Klay and GP on that night are the 2-2s. Now you're trying to get Pajmski minutes. They view Pajmski more as a 1-2, but more of a 2. And so I think there are nights where the Warriors want to go bigger and they don't love him as a 3, but then I also think there are nights where they want to maybe play guards more, and then they don't totally view him against certain teams as a 2. I think his tweener status is actually hurting him a little bit because he is strong and sturdy, but he's also shorter. If he was 6'7", 6'8", I think he'd be playing every single night. But there are times where I think the body type probably hurts him. And it is a matter of, is he just straight up let's just, if you go through it, right? Everybody's healthy. You have Curry and Chris Paul at the 1. You have, Klay and, pick your 2. Is it, GP, I guess, is probably the backup 2, or you could say he's the backup 3. Moody's the backup 2. Those are kind of interchangeable. Kuminga's the backup 4. Saric, when he's not starting and Looney is the backup 5. So you have, those basic, general iterations of a depth chart. And then you've got Pajmski, who's like your 11 and your 11, 12, and Trace Jackson-Davis, who's like your 11, 12. We talked about that last week. And Kerr's comfortable playing both of those guys. But I think some nights it gets lost in the shuffle. And now if you want to play Pajmski more too, and you don't view Moody as a 3, or you're viewing Klay more as a 3 in certain lineups, then where does Moody get his minutes? And so I think he gets caught, not to say that it's right, but that's where it gets caught, and that's where you notice the name he didn't mention. He didn't mention Cory Joseph. Well, notice the name that always comes up when you talk about why isn't Moody getting minutes, and we've had it a bunch on the text line this morning. Everybody says, why is Cory Joseph getting more minutes than Moody? Well, they're not even in the same – they don't play the same position. They're not even in the same category. It's not even a thought for Steve Kerr that he's playing Cory Joseph over Moses Moody. That isn't even part of the equation because Cory Joseph is basically the third-string point guard at this point. And so if Steph Curry's out – Cory Joseph is going to play. And Cory Joseph playing has nothing to do with Moses Moody is basically what I'm saying. Yet on a night-in, night-out basis, it's like, well, why is Cory Joseph playing 13 minutes and Moody's playing 15 or whatever it is? It's because they play different positions. So, again, long-winded answer for you, Dan, but I think that's kind of what Kerr was getting at.
Well, just staying with Cory Joseph for a second. Do you think that Pajmski at some point can jump Cory Joseph?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think we could already be to that point. I'm already to that point where you can. To me, if you're looking for ways to get Pajmski on the court, and Steve Kerr said he's gonna play and has to play, then to me, making him the backup point guard when Steph Curry's out, to me would be the easy. And he played backup point in the preseason. If you remember, Cory Joseph had a back injury, and they were flirting with the idea of starting Chris Paul. Remember, they started Chris Paul the majority of the preseason because Draymond Green was out. So they started Chris Paul with Steph, Klay, Wiggins, and Kevon Looney. And that meant with Cory Joseph also out that there were backup point guard minutes because Chris Paul was in the starting lineup. And so he got those minutes in the preseason. And so to me, Again, I think they view him as more of a 2-1 at this point than a 1-2, but he's a combo guard that can handle it, and he's so good at connecting the game, like Steve Kerr had mentioned. I would give it. Those are the minutes I would give Pajmski. As much as, like I said, I don't think Moody is a factor at all when it comes to Cory Joseph.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And Steve Kerr is a guy that believes in the point guard. He's sort of old school that way. He wants somebody that's going to handle and sort of, balance the floor and distribute, which is another reason why you see guys like Joseph have a level of importance and get run with the Golden State Warriors. I just think that collectively maybe there's a sense of frustration because Moody, when he plays, again, he does all the right things, but he could be a victim of the numbers game. And, I think his body type puts him sort of in that tweener mode where it's not necessarily a reflection on his game. It's just, where is he going to play with the Golden State Warriors? Just getting back to Pajmski really quick, because we haven't talked about him. This kid is, again, I think just like we have a tendency to overreact with Andrew Wiggins and all the trade talk, and Klay Thompson suddenly, turned 55 over the offseason and can't do it anymore. Somewhere in between lies the truth. I do think that Klay Thompson, as you have touched on, is going to have that big game. And hopefully he doesn't think it's going to atone for the 5 games prior to that where he wasn't very good. But that'll
be the first true test as to whether his attitude has changed. Right? If he comes into the press conference with the stank eye, like he wants to jump up on the table and start shouting expletives at everybody who doubted him.
But I also think that Pajmski is just that there's a slight overreaction because he's done so well. And hey, listen, man, nobody loves a younger player doing well than me. I love rookies, especially when rookies get an opportunity. Trace Jackson Davis, I love to see him get more run. But I also think that Pajmski has got it just like anybody else. And as high of a basketball IQ that he has, he was a minus 26 the other night. And
people went a little crazy off of the first game.
Agreed.
Let's be honest. I'm all for Pajmski can play a role. People went crazy when he scored 23 in the Tuesday game with Steph out, and I think there was a little bit of, I think the media plays into this because I think here's the media knows. Here's a dirty little secret, and you know this because you've been in the game longer than I have. The dirty little secret is the media knows the players and the narratives that fans get excited about. Like they know the things that it's why Jonathan Kaminga is one of the most talked about Warriors players on the entire roster that aren't Steph, Klay, or Draymond. It's because
we feed the beast, JD.
The media knows that there's a big chunk of Warrior fans that think Jonathan Kaminga is going to be the next Giannis or Kawhi or Paul George because that was kind of irrationally fed to them in some of the early comparisons when he was drafted going back to 2021. Bigger picture, the media knows that Warrior fans love the freaking young players and love the notion of another core group that's going to keep winning championships at the level that Steph, Klay, and Draymond have done, even if it's completely foolish to think of. We're talking about legends and Hall of Famers and walking statues. You can be a really good player and not be that level of player of those three that help build the dynasty. And so, but the point I'm getting at is Warrior fans love young players, and the media knows Warrior fans love young players, like almost irrationally so, the excitement level of this next wave and what it could be. And so I think that's where, Pajmski has an excellent game, as he did, and it's like, you're doing interviews about when people thought he could be special. And it's like, well, he is. He had a special game, but we do not know if Brandon Pajmski is a special NBA player. Like, let's slow our roll a little bit on that. So I do think people got way carried away with the game that Pajmski had against Minnesota on Tuesday. And, as great as it was, he should be playing. I get Steve Kerr saying that, but let's stop acting like that game means that he's going to be, this major contributor every single night this season. And I think you saw that in the game on Thursday. He's still a rookie in the NBA that has a lot of things to figure out and is going to have bad games or games where he looks looks lost or takes a minus 26 or whatever the heck it was.
And I also think that it provides a level of insight as to if you're a rookie and you get drafted by the Golden State Warriors, what it is that Steve Kerr is looking for. And he provided the powders and wallflower line earlier this week, and he's continued to sort of highlight the play of Pajmski, and that's that to me is a prototypical type of player that I think that Steve Kerr is willing to invest in. Now, again, there's a long way to go before he becomes somebody that you can rely on. We still don't know. He's still defining his game. But what you can see right now is that he's high energy and that he knows where to be on the basketball floor, and he picks it up pretty quick. And he's also got an attitude about him, but an attitude not like that of Jordan Poole.
No, he thinks he's good. Like, he knows he's good.
Well,
he's
so
confident.
did Jordan Poole, but I also think it's a little bit more humbling if that makes any sense. You got to have, I think, that level of cockiness if you want to be good, really at anything in life, but certainly in the NBA. Like, it's okay to feel as though you've arrived and you got this, even though you're still very, very green. But I think it provided a true insight as to what Steve Kerr values in younger players.
888-957-9570. Final 5-6 minutes here. Warriors this week on 95.7 The Game. John Dickinson and Dan Devone here as we're with you until noon. We do it each and every week right here. It is Warriors this week. 510, wasn't it Steve Kerr who put Pajmski in the rotation after that one game? Yeah, he did. He did. And to be honest, I was a little surprised that he did. But again, there's a difference between putting somebody in the rotation and acting as if they're going to be this major contributor every night. Like what we saw Tuesday is not what it's going to be every single night. Now, clearly the kid's got that game in him. And I think, Steve Kerr, he said it in the interview we just played with Willard and Dibbs last night, just the simple fact that, I think Steve Kerr likes the energy one, but the way he connects the game, because he has the ability to be a good passer. He has the ability to rebound and get out in transition. He has a confidence in his three-point shot. He has a little bit of an in-between game that I wondered how much that would translate to the NBA, but I think it has translated to the NBA more at least initially than I thought. And so nobody's saying he shouldn't be playing. It's just let's not anoint him something that he's not a little bit too soon because he bursts onto the scene and has that big game. And, we were saying the same thing, at least I was saying the same thing about Jordan Poole going back to 2021 after he went to the G League. And remember, he came back and he finished that year as we were all coming out of COVID. He finished that year playing a lot. And I remember saying, hey, let's calm down on Jordan Poole and let him extend this into an offseason and into at least a second season, which he did and got paid accordingly for his ability to do it. It's just a matter of, like, I just thought some of the conversations about Pajmski, as good as he was in that one game, it was like, whoa, let's just take a deep breath. Again, no slight to him, but it's more the reaction that it's nothing he did. He went out and played well, then he went out and didn't play well. But let's not start evaluating him when he plays poorly, a certain way, because it goes back to the Kaminga conversation, because you have it in your head that this kid is already a certain level of player that he isn't, because he hasn't proven it yet beyond one or two games.
Getting back to the interview with Steve Kerr, when he was talking about Andrew Wiggins, and I think that he's along the same lines of sort of what it is that we've talked about, that Andrew Wiggins is due for that breakout game and that it's coming. It's certainly not there yet, but he still has faith. And I think he said as much, that a guy that has been this good in the league for 7 or 8 years, I'll take that as far as assessing where he's going to be in another week or a month, that is going to return at some point. I guess the question I would have is, how long can he hold out? If I'm Coach Kerr, how much longer can you play and start Andrew Wiggins and be this lack this much productivity on a guy that you're this reliant on?
I think there's a real long leash as far as, like, who and here's the thing: who's starting if Wiggins isn't? Because again, it goes back to Kaminga doesn't play the 3 for this team. So like, I don't even think Steve Kerr looks at it as, well, I would put Kaminga in for Wiggins. Now maybe if he was having some whole entire games the way that he had some of those second halves that he had going back a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe there'd be but he doesn't, again, he doesn't really play the 3 for the Warriors. He's almost exclusively a 4. So I don't think, and look, Kaminga hasn't been anywhere near consistent enough top to bottom to where you're saying, I'm going to start this guy. I made this point last week. I'll just reiterate it. It's the fact that, if Kaminga is playing at a C level and Wiggins is playing at a D level, like, I'm not making a switch to get a play. Like, I need a player that's playing at an A level for a significant chunk of time, and a player that's playing at a D level before I'm going to flip flop them. And so, like, Kaminga, you could make the case just, in a vacuum, is Kaminga playing better than Wiggins? I think you could say yes, but one, they don't play the same position, and two, Kaminga's not playing so much better than Wiggins, consistently to where you'd even consider making that switch. At least that's how I tend to look at it. But look, there's fans, Devone, that are like, start Kaminga and Moody, and bench Wiggins and Klay even, at that point. So, that again, I think Klay's not going anywhere as far as the starting lineup. Wiggins, we'll see. I mean, I think if Wiggins continues to play like he has for another 10 games, I think the whispers are going to get louder, and I think Steve Kerr's going to have to consider some kind of alteration at that point. But the alteration may not be what the alteration may be Chris Paul going into the starting lineup, or it may be somebody else going into the starting lineup that isn't Jonathan Kaminga.
The beginning of the season, they get off to the 5-1 start. Maybe in retrospect, it was, and kind of had the sense at the time it was a bit of a bubble. And now with the injuries to Steph and Dre's out, and you get this, you're seeing the worst side of the Golden State Warriors, that they don't have that number 2. And, of course, the funk continues for Wiggins and Klay Thompson. As Steve Kerr pointed out to everybody, like, you just got to let this breathe, all right? I'm not saying that this is a team that's going to win an NBA championship, but they're not as bad as they're playing right now, just as they weren't as good as maybe when they got off to the 5-1 start. So I think that as this unfolds, and the last thing I know anybody has when it comes to the Warriors, and especially the 49ers, is patience. But that's what this requires before you can really assess this team.
It does. And it starts with the Warriors getting Steph and Curry back, which I think is the number one most important thing when you start to kind of parse through everything and where things sit. As far as moving forward and all of that, and you look at just keeping everybody updated. The most recent injury report, I know Steve Kerr did say good chance Steph is able to play in this one. Still questionable as of the 11:30 injury report. Obviously, Draymond Green's out. Gary Payton II is out as well. Devone, good stuff, man. Looking forward to next week. Excellent work as always, and we'll do this again soon.
Look forward to it, buddy.
All right, for Dan Devone, for Mark Grandy, I'm John Dickinson. We'll talk to you at 4:30 from Chase, Warriors and the Thunder. Keep it locked right here, 95.7 The Game.
November is a great time to get a new TV. Now that the top-rated brands like Samsung, LG, and Sony are at the lowest prices of the year. With Black Friday deals available, what more could you want? How about better than Black Friday? Before you click, you should call video only to see how you